Chapter 1296. Qian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The War King descends. The Demon King appears. Xuanyuan Wuba's words sent chills down everyone's spines. Was he abandoning his nephew? Who wouldn't be afraid of death? Everyone in the world was in awe of death. The higher one's cultivation was, the more honorable one's status was. They were even more afraid of death. Not being afraid meant that there were more important things or missions that were above death, making people forget their fear. Xianyuan Feng laughed bitterly in his heart. He had the most powerful family in the southern region, and his talent was outstanding. He was destined to have a bright future. Perhaps in 100 years, he would be able to stand on the stage of the continent side by side with the emperors, and be worshipped by everyone. He didn't have the time to enjoy all of this, nor did he have the chance to take a look. Now, his uncle's will was very clear and he couldn't resist. Was he unwilling? What could he do? Xianyuan Feng's gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on Xiaohan. This woman had a great secret, and this secret could change the fate of the Xianyuan family, break the shackles of the emperor level, and let the Xianyuan family stand at the peak of the continent, becoming the only one. Although his status was honorable and his talent was extraordinary, it was nothing compared to breaking through the emperor level and entering the god level. For the glory of the Xianyuan family, I, Xianyuan Feng, am willing to sacrifice my life and die without regrets. Xianyuan Feng said. He looked at his father one last time, his eyes filled with tears. He knew that his father still loved him very much. But between the future of the family and his family, his father could only choose the latter. Feng I'm sorry. Xianyuan Wuying suddenly burst into tears, his tears flowing like a spring. His cries moved all the cultivators present. Good! Xianyuan Wuba shouted. After you die, the family will confer you the title of prince. When I ascend the throne, your father will be the king of equality. He will be proud of the south, and when the people see your father, it will be as if I'm there. In the future, my son will be his son. When he dies, the entire Xianyuan family will wear mourning clothes for him and be buried in the ancestral mausoleum with the rights of the emperor. Boom! Everyone's heart trembled, especially translation Ning Feiyang. Based on his relationship with Ning Hongxian, he would be the king when the king. However, Xianyuan Wuba actually bestowed the title of king equal to Xianyuan Wuying, making him no different from DD. What kind of glory was this? Although after Xianyuan Feng's death, even if he was conferred the title of prince, it would be useless no matter how great the honor was. After all, he was already dead. However, his death had given his father the title of king equal. Xianyuan Wubao was really willing to sacrifice, and his methods were also ruthless. Xianyuan Feng, congratulations in advance for your ascension to the throne and for leading our Xianyuan clan to the highest glory. Xianyuan Feng congratulates King Pingding. However, I am unable to serve you in front of father. Forgive me for being unfilial. Xianyuan Feng struggled with all his might and spat out these words with great difficulty. Xianyuan Wuying almost fainted. Seeing this, Xianyuan Wuba ordered his men to support his brother. His cold eyes stared at Qin Hao and said, "Do it. Xianyuan Feng is dead, and all of your Shiliang people will be buried with him." You think I don't dare? Qin Hao's blood boiled as a vast dragon force extended from his arm. Exerting force from his palm, he pinched Xianyuan Feng's face until it was distorted. Traces of red lotus fire qi entered Xianyuan Feng's body and corroded his organs. Even though Xianyuan Feng tried his best to restrain himself, he still couldn't help but let out a painful scream. However, Qin Hao didn't crush Xianyuan Feng to death in the end. It wasn't that he didn't dare, but that he couldn't. If Xianyuan Feng was alive, he would more or less be a hindrance to the Xianyuan clan. Even if it didn't affect the overall situation, it would still make them wary. However, if he was completely dead, as Xianyuan Wuba had said, apart from Qin Hao, no one else in Dan Ji's group of 40 would be able to leave the southern region alive. Qin Hao couldn't ignore the overall situation. Melon Brother, Gnawing Tube, Iron Bite, and even the silly old man Dan Gu behind him were his family. The reason why Qin Hao was so strong was because he was having a psychological battle with Xianyuan Wuba. Obviously, Qin Hao had lost in the end, because Xianyuan Wuba was even more ruthless. Little Pavilion Master Qin, don't let loyalty get the better of you. In the stalemate, old Meng stepped forward. He couldn't bear it. Qin Hao was a rare genius. Everyone had seen with their own eyes how he had suppressed the combined forces of the three chosen from the southern domain. In terms of alchemy, body refinement, vital energy, the Tao of the sword, and control of flame, there was nothing he couldn't master. There was nothing he couldn't master, and his talent was on par with flawless. If such a genius really crushed Xianyuan Wuying's son to death, it would undoubtedly push him into the abyss. Little Pavilion Master Qin, Crown Prince of Nanao, why can't both sides take a step back? Why do you have to go to such extremes? Is it better for both sides to be crippled? Old Meng persuaded. Losing Xianyuan Feng was indeed a heavy blow to the Xianyuan clan. It was equivalent to breaking one of Nan Ao's future arms. Similarly, Qin Hao wouldn't die. At this moment, Old Meng's eyes fell on Xiaohan. His eyes were full of doubts. What kind of woman was this? Qin Hao, who was peerless in his generation, was infatuated with her and made Xianyuan Wuba cut off all means of retreat. He didn't hesitate to sacrifice one of the future leaders of the clan. Outstanding women in the world are like carps in the river. With Little Pavilion Master's talent, what kind of woman can't you get? Don't be stubborn and ruin your great future. Let go. Old Meng sighed. Let go. Qin Hao slowly turned his head and sneered. Senior Meng, I know you have good intentions, but you may not know that she is the beloved daughter of Northern Region's Daliao Emperor, Zhao's only child. She is my wife. Senior, please tell me, how should I let go? How should I let go? Qin Hao shouted the last word hysterically. It was like a dragon's roar reverberating in the wilderness, shocking all the experts. Northern Region's princess? The girl who was surrounded by maids in the Xianyuan family's camp like a fairy was Northern Region's martial Emperor Daliao's princess. In that case, Qin Hao was not only the master of Western Liang Dan Gu, but also Daliao's prince consort. In an instant, everyone's eyes fell on Xianyuan Wuba. Other than shock, there was only astonishment. First of all, they were shocked by the identity of Qin Hao and Xiaohan. Secondly, what had Xianyuan Wuba done? He had the martial emperor's princess under his control. So this was the case. At this moment, everyone finally understood and could understand why Qin Hao had no hesitation and was unwilling to retreat from the start. Xianyuan Wuba, how dare you? Ning Hongxian shouted in shock. He had the martial emperor's daughter under his control. Xiaohan was Daliao's only successor. She was the next empress. If this happened in the southern region, it would be equivalent to declaring war on the other empires. This was a serious matter. Why didn't Qin Hao mention it before? Otherwise, Ning Hongxian wouldn't have. Xianyuan Wuba, you're playing with fire? The sword sex martial granduncle stepped out. His wrinkled face was very serious. It was fine if the Xianyuan family was playing with fire. If the northern region's army came and the two regions went to war, the three sovereigns and four sects wouldn't be able to stay out of it. In the end, the billions of people would suffer. Are you still not going to hand her over? Luo Ho also stepped out. However, this time, he didn't deliberately speak for Qin Hao because of Luo Yuliang. The impact of this matter was great enough. It had already endangered the Arhat Palace. If the two regions went to war, the forces set up by the Arhat Palace would be involved. They couldn't avoid it. That would hurt the sect's foundation. It was the same for the other sect. Why do you need to ask about the Xianyuan family's business? Do you have nothing better to do? Xianyuan Wuba smiled coldly. With the support of the 6 martial emperors and the Dragon Emperor, he had the absolute upper hand. He didn't need to take anyone seriously. Moreover, he said that Leng Xian is the princess. Is she really the princess? It's just a one-sided statement. Ridiculous. Xianyuan Wuba put his hands behind his back. As long as the arrow in Xiao Han's body was forced out, the Xianyuan family would obtain a divine artifact. In addition, this woman had a divine aura. Her power was vaguely above the martial emperor level. With the divine aura protecting her, no one could do anything to her for the time being. Now, he had to firmly control her. He had to think of a way to force the arrow out and extract the divine aura. As for her beauty, there were all kinds of beauties in the southern proud border. The person in charge of the Xianyuan family wasn't that stupid. Do you think my words are ridiculous? Qin Hao said. He looked at the imperial censor. Call him over. The imperial censor nodded. Qin Hao naturally asked him to call Duan Zhanfei. With the current situation, there was no time to wait for Duan Zhanfei and Great Emperor Ning Wu to negotiate. The imperial censor took out half of a jade sound slip. The other half was in Duan Zhanfei's hands. They had an agreement to protect each other. As long as one side broke, the other side would rush over in the shortest time possible. At this moment, the imperial censor crushed this half of the sound slip into powder in front of everyone. Whoosh! In the clear sky, there seemed to be the sound of wind sweeping through. The 8-winged black dragon let out a few uneasy roars. It seemed to have sensed a terrifying force tearing through space and approaching quickly. 1 breath. 2 breaths. The scene was terrifyingly quiet. The heartbeats of the disciples of the various sects could be heard clearly. Everyone was suffocating. They didn't dare to breathe and waited quietly. Qin Hao said to call for help. Could it be that there was another expert behind him? Then, what kind of cultivation level was this person? Xianyuan Wuba also felt a sense of seriousness. Under such circumstances, Qin Hao still dared to call for help. Obviously, the person who came would not be a common person. 3 breaths. 4 breaths. 5 breaths. 6 breaths. Time passed by in minutes and seconds, but it seemed so long. Crack! After 7 breaths, a sudden clap of thunder in the clear sky echoed between heaven and earth. Everyone looked up and saw a beam of dark light descending from the sky. In an instant, within the dark light, the majesty of the Emperor's stage was unstoppable. The fierce murderous aura sent the 5,000 top elites of the Xianyuan family into a frenzy. The 6 emperors also dodged one after another. Their hearts trembled. Emperor's stage, someone said. At this moment, the dark light landed, and the ground was torn apart under a pair of feet. Everyone saw that beside Qin Hao, a middle-aged man in black appeared out of thin air. This middle-aged man had delicate facial features and exuded a free and easy aura. His temperament was like that of a scholar, but his aura was mixed with an astonishing murderous aura. It was as if his hands were stained with the blood of thousands of people, and the bones under his feet were piled up. Uncle Duan. Looking at Duan Zhanfei, Qin Hao's throat was a little choked up. In the face of such a strong person, the Spirit Beast sect, the Herbal Pill Hall, the Blazing Sun Temple, and even the Ning family were all bullying him. They either demonstrated their strength, provoked him, or challenged him on the stage. All of them were the southern region showing their strength. At this time, with the arrival of an elder, Qin Hao's tired shoulders finally had some sense of support. Duan Zhanfei nodded lightly and glanced at Xianyuan Feng, who was being strangled by Qin Hao. Of course, he knew how much pressure the other party was under. Next, his calm eyes looked at the Xianyuan family's camp and saw Xiao Han in the crowd, whose eyes were empty and had lost all spiritual energy. Suddenly, thousands of murderous intent burst out from the bottom of his calm eyes, and he said in a hoarse voice, "Battle King Duan Zhanfei, under the command of Emperor Shao of the northern border. Those unrelated to the sect of the southern region, please leave." As he spoke, a set of ferocious demonic armor covered his body. The delicate middle-aged man looked like a demon king descending to the world. At this moment, he stepped towards Shao Han. His body was incomparably tall. Chapter 1297. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Emperors and ministers. Everyone's heart trembled. The person Qin Hao summoned was an emperor-level cultivator. There were less than 100 emperors on the continent, and the entire Divine Wilderness continent was actually controlled by emperors. Every word they spat out had sufficient weight in itself. And Duan Zhanfei introduced himself, claiming that he was the warlord under Emperor Shao. Obviously, Qin Hao and Shao Han's identities were very real. Xianyuan Wuba was in trouble, but Duan Zhanfei's emperor-level cultivation wasn't high. Many powerhouses present could feel that he was just a lower-level emperor. It was just that his blood aura was too strong, and his murderous aura was too strong. He must have been tempered by thousands of flames and blood. This was something that other powerhouses in the Grand Dominion didn't have. Even Xianyuan Wuba couldn't help but feel very uncomfortable facing Duan Zhanfei's murderous aura. However, he dared to face the huge Xianyuan family alone without any scruples. This wasn't Beijiang. Wasn't he afraid of being besieged by the emperors? Did he want to die? No one present could understand Duan Zhanfei's feelings. They only saw him charging forward without any fear. And only Qin Hao understood this spirit. Duan Zhanfei followed Shao Yi for 10 years and went through countless difficulties to quell the rebellion. This kind of person had climbed out of a pile of corpses countless times. To him, death was just an ordinary word that had no meaning. Duan Zhanfei's belief was Shao Yi. Fighting for the emperor was a supreme honor. It was in the past, and it was now. So was death. For Daliao, for the Shao family, he could die at any time. Not to mention facing the Xianyuan family, even if he was facing the entire southern region, Warlord Daliao would not shrink back. This was his mission and also where he belonged. He only had one goal, and that was to protect the princess at all costs. But what surprised Qin Hao was that Uncle Duan's cultivation had improved by another level since the emperor-marshal competition. "How dare you!" In the sky, Xianyuan Xiu roared and was about to stop Duan Zhanfei. Duan Zhanfei looked down on everything and stepped on their emperor. Did he have a death wish? Nobody move. Xianyuan Wuba raised his hand as a ferocious expression appeared at the corner of his mouth. A mere 2-star monarch is worthy of being called a king? Xianyuan Wuba's words were filled with mockery. People like Duan Zhanfei were only at the bottom of the monarch rank in the 3 great clans of the southern region. To ordinary martial artists, Duan Zhanfei was like an insurmountable mountain. In the Xianyuan family, the Ning family, and the Li family, at best, they could be top battle generals, but they didn't have the right to be called kings. So it's not just the Western Liang that has declined. There's also the northern frontier. Second stage Emperor Yuan, let's see what qualifications you have to call yourself king. Xianyuan Wuba growled as he raised his fist, stirring up the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. A dazzling white gold light gathered, filled with endless gravity precept. That power caused the void to tremble. The huge aura of the 4th Order Yuan Emperor immediately surpassed the murderous aura emitted by Duan Zhanfei. Then, he threw out a punch. Stop! Boom! It was like a bolt of lightning. A majestic roar penetrated the void and descended on the scene. Everyone's ears couldn't help but roar. This roar was extremely oppressive. Many emperors present couldn't resist it and had an uncontrollable urge to kneel down. There were also strong and weak emperors. 9-star great emperors were the strongest in the mortal world. Below the title of Great Emperor, none of the other emperors dared to compete with them. At this time, this loud roar was obviously made by a 9-star Great Emperor. Immediately, a vortex appeared in the void, and the space was torn apart. An incomparably tall figure, dressed in a yellow robe with 9 dragons, stepped out of the vortex. At this moment, the 8-winged black dragon in the sky fell for no reason and crawled on the ground. Its dragon body trembled, and its noble head was buried deep in the ground. The 6 emperor-level elders of the Xianyuan family were also directly suppressed by this roar. Each of them trembled in fear. The 5,000 soldiers of the Xianyuan family were almost scared out of their wits and knelt down. At this time, there was only one person standing in the void. Son greets father. Facing the figure in the void, Ning Hongxian and Ning Feiyang knelt down on both knees and saluted as subjects. We greet Great Emperor Ning Wu. Whoosh! No matter which force they were from, those with lower seniority all knelt down. This was not because they were oppressed by the other party's strength, but because they were incomparably respectful to a 9-star Great Emperor. Of course, the sect leaders and elders of the various sects did not kneel down because of the aura. However, they also lowered their statuses and saluted the void with cupped fist. It was not only the sect leaders and elders of the various sects who had stepped into the peak of the Emperor realm, the half-step Yuan Emperor realm, and the true Emperor-level powerhouses did the same. This group of people had their own pride, and they also had the qualifications to break through to the 9-star Great Emperor realm. There was no need for them to kneel. In addition, there were a few people who had not reached this level, but they also did not bow down. Qin Hao, Xiaogua, Keir the Imperial Censor, and the elegant scholar sitting in the audience seats. Qin Hao, the Imperial Censor, and the elegant scholar. The 3 of them were very calm and were not even affected at all. However, Xiaogua and Keir had to muster up all their strength to barely support their knees and not kneel down. Among them, even the 2 powerful emperor servants of the elegant scholar had to bow to Great Emperor Ning Wu. It could be seen how high the status of a 9-star Great Emperor was. Wuba greets Great Emperor Ning. Xianyuan Wuba did not dare to be negligent. The person in the void was on the same level as his father. Even Xianyuan Wuying, Xianyuan Wuyao, and all the princes of the Li family, Li Yaxu, bowed at the same time. Nephew Wuba, nephew Yaxu, fellow Taoists, you may rise. Ning Lingjue smiled faintly. His body slowly descended, but he did not completely land on the ground. He was still suspended in midair. It was just that he was closer to the crowd now. After saying that, Ning Chao's cold gaze swept over the surroundings, nodding at many familiar faces. Finally, he helplessly looked at Duan Zhanfei. Little brother Duan, I'm wearing a battle armor. You are really making things difficult for me. When the sound slip under Duan Zhanfei's control shattered, he knew that something big had happened to the Imperial messengers. He tore through space and arrived without saying anything. He was a guest in Ning Lingjue's palace, but Great Emperor Ning Wu could not be with him all the time. When he noticed that Duan Zhanfei was heading towards the golden light, he immediately chased after him. Even so, he was delayed by a few breaths, and these few breaths had almost ignited a war. Brother Ning, you know what I mean. Duan Zhanfei did not look at Ning Lingjue and said with his back facing him. During these days of interaction, other than the differences between the customs of the 2 countries, the matter of Shao Han was the most important thing. However, Duan Zhanfei could not accept Ning Lingjue's conditions. In fact, Battle King Daliao had already made a big concession. As long as Ning Lingjue was willing to take on this matter, Daliao was willing to pay 1 billion heaven crystals and 10 pinnacle emperor weapons. The northern border and the southern region were separated by an endless ocean. Otherwise, Duan Zhanfei could agree on behalf of Shao even if they had to give up their country. Daliao was willing to do anything for this. However, Ning Lingjue's conditions were too harsh, and even a little too much. He actually wanted Qin Hao to "You can think about it." Ning Lingjue was not in a hurry. He looked at Xianyuan Wuba and said, "Wuba, what do you think? Give me some face and hand him over to me first, okay? Forgive me for not being able to comply." Xianyuan Wuba rejected coldly. Did he think he was stupid? Great Emperor Ning Wu and Battle King Daliao had negotiated to let the Ning family get the benefits first, but they wanted the Xianyuan family to let go of Shao Han. What would the Xianyuan family get then? It seemed that Ning Hongshuan's profiteering style had been inherited from his father. "Wuba, you are becoming more and more like a hero. Unfortunately, if your father was here, he might be qualified to say this to me. But you? Haha." Ning Lingjue's words were filled with contempt. Did Xianyuan Wuba really think of himself as his father? How dare he challenge Ning Lingjue? It was not up to Xianyuan Wuba to decide whether to let him go or not. Ning Lingjue had the final say here. Of course, he did not directly snatch Shao Han. If he did, it would not benefit the Ning family. He then said to Duan Zhanfei, "Brother Duan, if you agree to my conditions, it will not harm your northern borderline. It will even increase the overall strength of Western Liang. All three of us will be winners. Is it so hard to submit to the Ning family?" To Ning Lingjue, submitting to the Ning family might be a blessing for Qin Hao and Shao Yi. Submit? Qin Hao's gaze turned cold. He asked, "Uncle Duan, what did he say to you?" Duan Zhanfei's body trembled. He, who was wearing the Demon King armor, felt a little powerless. He slowly turned his head and looked at Qin Hao with some guilt in his eyes. "You will be the Prime Minister and Ning Hongxian will be the Emperor. You will assist the descendants of the Ning family and build a great empire. And I, Daliao, will become his vassal and Western Liang will be his slave forever." Boom! Qin Hao's mind shook violently. What kind of condition was this? If he really agreed, Western Liang and Daliao would lose all dignity. Qin Hao was not the only one who was shocked. Xiaogua, Kaer, Gnawing Tube, Iron Bite, and other Dangu members were furious. Even the Sword Sect, Sacred Hall, Arhat Palace, Li Yaxu, and Xianyuan Wuba were stunned by Ning Lingjue's move for a long time. Ning Lingjue made Qin Hao the Prime Minister and stayed in the Ningwu Empire to assist his son. From then on, the people of Western Liang would be his slave. And once the Ning family gave the order, Daliao would fight for them unconditionally. If this really happened, the Ning family would dominate the southern region. How would the Li and Xianyuan families survive? In another 100 years, they might even be annexed. "Old man!" Li Yaxu could not help but shout angrily. He raised his head and looked straight at Ning Lingjue. "Impressive!" Xianyuan Wuba gave the heir a thumbs up. He felt that he was ruthless enough. The Xianyuan family only wanted Shao Han's divine arrow and divine aura. But this Ning Lingjue wanted to control Shao Yi's son-in-law, which was equivalent to enslaving Daliao. Think about it. If Qin Hao stayed in Ningwu, even if Shao Han returned to become the empress, what would she do? This was completely strangling Western Liang and Daliao. "Haha, I didn't force them. Do as you wish." Ning Lingjue smiled faintly. He did not care even if Li Yaxu scolded him. In his opinion, with Qin Hao as the Prime Minister and his son as the Empress, once they achieved immortal merits, Shao Yi's son-in-law might even benefit. After all, he had the merit of supporting the Empress. If you wholeheartedly assist Hongxian, he will definitely not treat you badly. As long as you nod your head now, I can even make sure that Xianyuan Wuba and his group do not return today. Ning Lingjue said. Just a moment ago, he was still full of righteousness, but now, he was suffused with a demonic aura. Involuntarily, this sentence shocked Xianyuan Xiao and the other emperors of the Xianyuan family, and their faces turned pale. As for Xianyuan Wuba, he felt that Ning Lingjue, who was standing above him, was like a cloud of death that could swallow him up at any time. He was actually a little scared. Chapter 1298. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Ning Emperor, aren't you afraid of my emperor's revenge? Aren't you afraid that the Ning Wu Empire will become a wasteland? Xianyuan Xiao yelled nervously. Several people gathered around Xianyuan Wuba. If things went wrong, they would send the crown prince away at all costs. But the 6 of them would probably all die here. Wuba, don't be nervous. This is just my imagination. It hasn't been implemented yet. Ning Lingjue said with a smile. Xianyuan Wuba saw this smile and found it extremely terrifying. Not nervous? Who wouldn't be nervous? This old man is so evil. However, on second thought, Ning Lingjue had his Tao of heaven and earth, and Xianyuan Wuba could also build a bridge for himself. Taking an unconventional approach, he focused his gaze on Duan Zhanfei and said, Your Excellency, Battle King, the Ning clan is not the only one in the southern region. My Xianyuan clan's foundation is not inferior to the Ning clan's. Why don't you join hands with me to resolve this situation? Xianyuan Wuba glanced at Qin Hao and said with contempt, That kid from Western Liang may have some talent, but Western Liang is a barren land. How can it compare to the rich land of southern Ao? My second brother is the legitimate heir of the Xianyuan royal family. He and the princess are a match made in heaven. In the future, he will be the king of equality and the princess will be his wife. If you agree to let her marry my second brother, the Xianyuan family and the Shao family will unite by marriage. I swear that I will protect you and the princess. His words stirred up the crowd again. Everyone thought about it. This was an option for Duan Zhanfei. After all, the princess of Daliao had fallen into the hands of the Xianyuan family. Qin Hao was very talented, but there was no emperor in Western Liang. Compared to the huge resources of the Xianyuan family, he was like an ant looking at an elephant. In terms of identity, Xianyuan Wuying, as the second son of the proud emperor, could sit side by side with the emperor in the future. What did Qin Hao have? A little pavilion lord. So at first glance, Xianyuan Wuying was indeed more suitable for Shao Han than Qin Hao. Ning Lingjue's mouth twitched. He cursed in his heart. Xianyuan Wubao was very smart. You want to unite by marriage with the princess of Daliao? Duan Zhanfei replied. His demon-like sharp eyes flashed slightly under his helmet. He snorted coldly, Is your second brother worthy? Boom. Everyone was shocked. Was he rejected? Duan Zhanfei didn't give the Xianyuan clan any face, rebuking the Xianyuan clan's ruler. Was he worthy? This was endless contempt. War King. Was the prince of the king of the 3 princes of the prince of the 3 emperor of southern region. And were the prince is king translation king? Was prince. In Lingjuet translation in translation underscore underscore S's translation T translation R S air S's is translations S translation T air emperor. This was for that was for was is was want a S with the highest talent in the divine wilderness continent. Yes, God could protect his daughter. He wouldn't be separated from his wife by those cold-hearted people in the 9 heavens. In Shao Yi's heart, he still had a little hope. He hoped that his son-in-law would one day be as powerful as the deity king. Maybe at that time, Shao Yi would be able to see his wife again. In the little time he had left to live, he had this hope. And Qin Hao was the Qin Hao's. As for conquering the continent? Sorry, Emperor Yuan of the mortal world is like an ant. Shao Yi wanted to create a god. Qin Hao didn't know his father-in-law's plan. Shao Yi's was too big. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. when Duan Zhanfei rejected him, saying, "Is Xianyuan wooing worthy?" Qin Hao felt warm in his heart. Ha ha ha! Ning Hongxian couldn't help but burst into laughter. This was the first time someone questioned a prince of the Xianyuan family in the southern region. It was a merciless slap to the face. This warlord Daliao did a good job. His courage was astonishing. Of course, this was the result that Ning Lingjue and Ning Hongxian were most happy to see. They were really afraid that Duan Zhanfei wouldn't be able to resist the temptation and would agree. At this moment, Xianyuan Wuba's face was extremely ugly. "Haha, how about it? Do you want to consider my father's suggestion?" Ning Hongxian gazed at Qin Hao with a teasing look in his eyes. He had regained his high and mighty aura. Since the warlord rejected Xianyuan Wuba, the only path left was the Ning family. If not, how could he save Xiaohan? Qin Hao didn't have a second choice. "I'll be the prime minister and you'll be the emperor?" Qin Hao looked at Ning Hongxian calmly. "It's just a title. If you sincerely assist me, you'll be my brother in the future." Ning Hongxian smiled. Qin Hao's talent had been recognized by many experts in the southern region. He wasn't inferior to Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang. He was very reliable. Especially in alchemy, he would be an inexhaustible treasure for the Ning family in the future. "Are you worthy?" Before Qin Hao could answer, the imperial trainer spoke first. In the 5,000 years of the divine wilderness, no one could surpass Qin Hao in terms of alchemy. In the past, Denda dominated the East continent. Now, Ning Hongxian was shameless enough to say that when others wanted to take him as their minister. What a joke! How can a servant interrupt when the master is talking? Ning Hongxian stared at the imperial trainer with a gloomy look. Qin Hao took a step forward and stood between them. He smiled and said to Ning Hongxian, "I've made up my mind. What do you think?" Ning Hongxian was delighted. "Who do you think you are to be my emperor?" Qin Hao replied with a smile. The imperial trainer also smiled at Ning Hongxian's attitude. Emperor? In Denda's eyes, there was no emperor in the world. Not to mention the emperor, Ning Hongxian still wasn't qualified to be called brother. "Are you sure you want to reply in this way?" Ning Hongxian's face was terrifyingly gloomy. It was as if a volcano was erupting in his heart. Someone dared to ask him, "Who am I, Ning Hongxian, to my face?" "Get out of my sight." Qin Hao didn't want to look at this person anymore. Thump. Everyone felt as if a string in their heart had been pulled taut. Qin Hao and Duan Zhanfei both chose the third option. They didn't choose the Xianyuan family or the Ning family. It was a dead end. Clap, 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 applause resounded rhythmically above everyone's head. Everyone looked up and saw Ning Lingjue. What a pair of loyal and affectionate son-in-laws. However, they seemed to be too stupid. Since that's the case, do as you please. Ning Lingjue's body rose higher into the sky. As he flew, he shouted coldly at Xianyuan Wuba, "Settle it yourselves. Life and death are up to the heavens. However, if anyone dares to harm my Golden Light City, even if it's just a grain of sand, I will make sure he dies without a complete corpse." At the end, he added that the people of Western Liang and Northern Borderline needed to be taught a lesson. As soon as he said this, everyone's heart trembled. Ning Lingjue was going to let the Xianyuan family slaughter Dan Gu and the others. Many experts looked at Qin Hao with pity. However, other than sighing, they could only sigh. Bang! A loud explosion resounded. Almost as soon as Ning Lingjue finished speaking, the 8 pavilions representing the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects at the back of the auction house were blown to smithereens by this powerful force. At this moment, everyone's expression became very interesting. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Ning Lingjue himself. He had just declared that if Duan Zhanfei and Xianyuan Wuba fought, no one was allowed to harm the Ning family's territory. No matter which side it was, they would all die without a complete corpse. However, someone actually dared to destroy his 8 pavilions in public as a demonstration. This explosion was too violent and sudden. Even Xianyuan Wuba couldn't help but be shocked, afraid that it was done by the people of the Xianyuan family. As for Ning Lingjue, he released his 9-star Emperor's aura. In the void, he glanced around and a terrifying endless storm was formed in an instant, rushing towards the 8 pavilions. In the void there was a strong platinum flame. However, when this invisible storm arrived, it was as if it had fallen into a deep quagmire, without any ripples. Then, everyone saw a graceful figure from afar. Surrounded by a large group of women, she slowly walked over. This graceful figure emitted a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Ning Lingjue, you are so impressive. Not only are you impressive, but you are also emitting a wave of nauseating energy. A figure wearing a black veil stepped into the hall. The black veil was as thin as a cicada's wings. Under the clothes, the woman's alluring figure could be clearly seen. This woman was tall and slender. Her breasts were swollen, which made people's noses bleed and their imaginations run wild. However, at this moment, no one dared to look in that direction. They didn't even dare to take a look. People as strong as the Sword Sect's martial granduncle, the Sacred Palace's Yang Tai, the Xianyuan family's elder Xianyuan Xiu, Xianyuan Wuba, Li Yaxu, and the others were all suppressed by the woman's aura. As if they were ashamed of their inferiority, they lowered their heads deeply. Incomparable respect gushed out from their hearts, but they didn't dare to blaspheme. Palace Lord Yi? Ning Lingjue was very surprised. The woman before him had the same cultivation as him. They were both 9-star great emperors. He immediately glanced at Ning Hongxian, his eyes full of blame. Today was the Ning family's auction ceremony, and the palace lord of the Night Azura Palace, one of the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects, was actually coming personally. Why didn't he tell him? However, in the eyes of the other 9-star great emperors, it was like a joke. You don't have to glare at Ning Hongxian. As a 9-star great emperor, you actually didn't notice me. Is it because your cultivation has regressed, or is it because you're too arrogant to the point where you can't extricate yourself? Yi Ninghong's voice was filled with sarcasm. Her voice was extremely seductive and could easily make a young man fall for her. At this moment, she was also wearing a thin black veil on her face. Her face couldn't be seen clearly, but it was rumored that Yi Ninghong was the #1 great empress of the southern region and also the #1 beauty. Palace Lord Yi, you must be joking. Palace Lord Ye's cultivation might have improved a lot. You must have stepped into the 2nd level of the 9-star great emperor realm. Ning Lingjue was a little embarrassed and his skin was extremely thick. Of course, he couldn't fulfill the promise of dying without a complete corpse on Yi Ninghong. However, Yi Ninghong's appearance made Ning Lingjue very confused. Could it be that she only wanted to mock them? The #1 beauty of the southern region probably didn't have the time to do that. Senior Yi. Qin Hao took the initiative to step forward and bowed slightly. Immediately after, his eyes met with the old demon, who was beside Yi Ninghong, and both of them smiled. Of course, Duan Zhanfei alone couldn't save Xiaohan. The reason why Qin Hao was so calm was that the Night Azura Palace hadn't appeared yet. At this moment, it was the right time for Palace Lord Yi to appear. Young Master Qin, I don't deserve to be called senior. What made everyone's eyes pop out was that the 9-star great empress, Yi Ninghong, quickly returned the bow to Qin Hao. Her bow was even lower than Qin Hao's. Not to mention others, even Ning Lingjue couldn't get used to this scene. He opened his eyes wide and found it unbelievable. After all, even he wasn't qualified to receive such a bow from Yi Ninghong. End of chapter. Chapter 1299. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations War of the Thearchs. The atmosphere was a little strange. Although the 9-star great emperor was returning the greeting, it still overturned everyone's view of the world. Ning Hongxian frowned and glanced at the old demon. The middle-aged man was the Knight Luo Palace's sacred ruler and the man of the southern region's first empress. The old demon had borrowed 3 million earth crystals from Qin Hao during the auction to help him suppress the Tang Du and seize the ownership rights of the ancient beast. He had also said that he had a good impression of Qin Hao. Could the old demon be the problem? Even so, Yining Hong wouldn't lower herself to return the greeting to Qin Hao. After all, the difference between their statuses was like heaven and earth. The pressure in Xianyuan Wuba's heart suddenly increased. It was difficult for ordinary martialists to catch the eye of a Tharch. Among the Thearchs there was a hierarchy, and the 9-star Great Emperor was the most important. He looked down on Qin Hao, just like how Yining Hong couldn't be bothered with him. However, how could he not be nervous when the 9-star Great Empress returned the greeting to Qin Hao? As the next ruler of the southern region, Xianyuan Wuba could infer a lot of information from the actions of others. Yining Hong's actions had already revealed an extremely dangerous signal to the Xianyuan family. If Qin Hao attached himself to her, would Western Liang have no Tharch? It didn't matter. Yining Hong alone could beat 10 Thearchs. Master, Hong, don't be humble with each other. Deal with this matter first. There will be a lot of time to communicate in the future, the old demon said. His eyes, which were usually filled with wretchedness, were now fixed on Xianyuan Wuba like sharp swords that could slay enemies. Did he really think that the southern region's Night Palace master was so courteous to Qin Hao because of his relationship? Wrong. Although the old demon's relationship was important, it wasn't the only reason. Qin Hao's identity was the main reason. Who was Qin Hao? 600 years ago, Dendi of the East Continent stood at the pinnacle of the continent. He was known as the most terrifying 9-star Great Emperor, comparable to the current sunset battle god. Just as Xianyuan Wuba had said, there was a hierarchy within the monarch realm. 9 stars were the highest, and those below the title of Great Emperor were all ants. There was no difference between a weak monarch or a primitive emperor. However, within the 9 stars there were also differences between the strong and the weak. In fact, at Yining Hong's and Ning Lingjua's level, the higher their cultivation, the more they could sense the strength of a 9-star great monarch. The 9-star monarch realm was divided into several realms. The strongest realm was close to the divine realm. It was just like how Ning Lingjue had praised Palace Master Yi, asking if he had broken through the second level of the 9-star Emperor realm. Of course, those were just empty words. Actually, he knew that Yining Hong hadn't broken it, and so had Ning Lingjue. However, Yining Hong was clear that 600 years ago, Qin Hao, who had killed 2 emperors of the Sacred Hall with a single arrow, was already infinitely close to the final realm of the 9-star Emperor realm. Perhaps with just a small step forward, the divine wilderness continent could give birth to a god. As for Qin Hao's secret, only Dog Spirit and the old demon knew about it. Xiao Han, Xiaogua, and the others didn't know about it. Otherwise, how could the Shiliang Blood Emperor, who was also in the monarch realm, be willing to be Qin Hao's monarch servant and treat him as his monarch master? In the pavilion, the old demon told Yining Hong this secret. She was already the old demon's woman, so she could be completely trusted. When Yining Hong faced Qin Hao, a colossus, who was above the 9-star Great Emperor realm, her sense of inferiority was naturally reflected. If Dendi was willing to guide her in the future, it wouldn't be a dream for Yining Hong to break through the second level. In fact, her achievements would be even higher. This was the main reason why she lowered her attitude. Because Qin Hao himself had an extremely terrifying weight. Dendi was the only person in the divine wilderness who had reached the last level of the monarch realm. The old demon's wretched gaze immediately crushed the weakest barrier in Xianyuan Wuba's heart. He was dumbfounded and said absent-mindedly, "It's over." As soon as he said this, everyone finally realized that the problem was indeed with the old demon. That middle-aged man was Qin Hao's servant. And this servant was incomparably awesome. He had slept with the #1 empress of the southern region. The sword sex elder Meng, Yang Tai, Li Yaxu, and the others were all dumbfounded. They were speechless. All right, then let's deal with this matter first. Yining Hong's nightingale-like laughter came from under her veil. Then, she looked at Ning Lingjue, who was in mid-air. What did you just say? The Ning family doesn't care about this matter? All right, I'll take care of it. Bang. This sentence was like a ruthless brick that fell from the sky, ruthlessly falling on Xianyuan Wuba's head, smashing him so hard that he staggered backward. At this time, the entire sky seemed to be gradually dimming. An invisible and mighty emperor's aura covered the entire Golden Light City. Everyone knew that Yining Hong's 9-star emperor's intent had been released. In the southern region, she might not be the strongest Emperor Yuan. In a head-on confrontation, she might not even be able to defeat Ning Lingjue. But with the unpredictable power of the Night Luo Palace, even if the enemy fled to the ends of the world, they would be killed invisibly thousands of miles away. She was undoubtedly the most troublesome Emperor Yuan. To be honest, Xianyuan Xiao of the Xianyuan family would rather be killed by Great Emperor Ning Wu's palm than escape with a fluke mentality. If he were to die under Yining Hong's spell inexplicably, it would be too sullen. And if the 6 of them worked together, they might be able to buy a few seconds in front of Ning Lingjue, allowing Xianyuan Wuba to escape. However, facing Yining Hong, even if Xianyuan Wuba escaped, he wouldn't be able to escape death. Palace Master Yi, what do you want to do? Xianyuan Xiao let out a horrified cry. His pale face was about to collapse. Xianyuan Wuba and the others also retreated repeatedly. Let him go or die. Yining Hong spat out coldly. Screech. Following her words, above the void, a giant beast that was not inferior to the 8-winged black dragon descended. It covered the sky and the sun, and black gas lingered around it, causing the world of Golden Light City to become even darker. Everyone raised their heads and could faintly see an 8-winged giant bird flying freely in the black fog, exuding a terrifying beast emperor aura. It was Yining Hong's mount, the guardian divine beast of the Night Luo Palace, the 8-winged demon Oriole. This demon Oriole was said to be the mount of the previous Night Luo Palace master, and it was later passed down to Yining Hong. Its strength was infinitely close to a 9-star beast emperor, and it was even stronger than the Li family's Kuan Peng and the Xianyuan family's 8-winged black dragon. With the demon Oriole cooperating with Yining Hong, even if Ning Lingjue wanted to intervene, he couldn't stop them at all. But the old demon, who always liked to be in the limelight, didn't show off at this time. On the contrary, he was incomparably solemn. Of course, he knew that if Yining Hong interfered in this matter, even if she temporarily suppressed the Xianyuan family, she would undoubtedly completely offend them, including the Ning family. In the future, the disciples of the Night Luo Palace would be in danger in the southern region. Worse still, the Night Luo Palace might even face the crisis of being exterminated by the Ning family and Xianyuan family. The old demon had tricked his woman. But Su Yongfu had no choice. Palace Master Yi, wantonly killing people in my Ning Wu Empire, I'm afraid this isn't good, right? Ning Lingjue's expression was very cold. As the great emperor of Ning Wu, he could say that he wouldn't interfere in this matter. However, Golden Light City belonged to the Ning family, and he couldn't just watch Yining Hong act arrogantly in the Ning Wu Empire. You want to interfere now? Yining Hong turned back and looked at Ning Lingjue. Unfortunately, you can't interfere even if you want to. Was she pressured? Of course. She might even ruin her master's foundation. However, if she gave herself to the old demon, she would have to follow him and cripple her cultivation without any complaints or regrets. At that time, an even more terrifying power of the law of darkness descended on Golden Light City. In front of everyone's eyes, it was difficult to see a figure within 3 meters. Not to mention the weak disciples of the various sects, Even the other emperor-level experts couldn't resist Yi Ninghong's power of the law of darkness. Trapped in this boundless world of darkness, they felt as if they were abandoned by the world, and their hair stood on end. Within the law of darkness, Yi Ninghong could be said to be invincible. What if the old man wants to interfere? Suddenly, a shout reverberated in the void. This shout was like the roar of a raging wind, and in one fell swoop, all the haze in Golden Light City dissipated. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1300. Primordial Alchemy Supremacy. It was as if it had come from ancient times. With the power of the Great Path, it broke Palace Master Ye's dark rules and brought Golden Light City back to life. Above the void, the 8-winged demon Oriole seemed to be caught by an invisible giant hand. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not escape from its original position. The mighty voice spread. Every corner of Golden Light City was filled with a terrifying ancient aura. It was as if heaven and earth were completely suppressed. Ning Tsangsong. Yi Ninghong looked at the sky. Her heart trembled and she said solemnly, Ning Tsangsong, the patriarch of the martial Ning Empire, an ancient Yuan emperor who had stepped into the second realm of the 9-star monarch stage. This time, it was troublesome. The scene seemed to be frozen. Many monarch stage masters did not dare to act rashly. To be precise, they were intimidated by the ancient voice. Perhaps the disciples of the various sects did not know who this person was. They only felt that the owner of the ancient voice was very terrifying. However, every monarch stage master present did not forget the 3 words, Ning Tsangsong. These 3 words represented the previous era of the southern region and were extremely important. The ancient Yuan emperor of the Ning family, the Li family's patriarch, the Xianyuan family's patriarch, Xianyuan Wutian, Palace Master Ye's master, the Demon Knight Emperor, and the 2 emperors of the Blazing Sun Temple were equally famous. This group of people was on par with Dendi and the Sunset Battle God in the East Continent. How could they not be terrifying? Perhaps in the eyes of the disciples of the various sects, the southern region was controlled by the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects. The various sect masters and emperors were the sky above the warriors of the southern region. But in fact, when something big happened, it was still this group of ancient Yuan emperors who were in charge. Now, the Demon Knight Emperor's lifespan was exhausted, and the 2 emperors of the sacred temple were killed. Only the Li family, the Xianyuan family, and the Ning family were left. The appearance of any one of them was enough to change the situation in an instant. The scene fell into silence. No one dared to make a sound. They had to hold their farts, because no one present was qualified to talk to Ning Tsangsong. Even the first empress of the southern region was only a junior in front of him. Young master! It's Patriarch Ning Tsangsong. In the audience seats at the back of the crowd, the 2 green-robed emperor's servants trembled slightly with excitement. In terms of seniority, Ning Tsangsong was Tsangsong. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. In the entire Ning clan, his status was far above that of a refined scholar. Only the living ancestor of the Ning family in the Great Ding Duchy could compare to him. The moment he appeared, he restrained Palace Master Yi and sent word that he was going to interfere in today's matter. There was no need to speak of this goal. It was obvious that Knight Azura Palace was not allowed to interfere. The advantage that Qin Hao had just obtained fell back into defeat. What should we do, young master? Little brother Qin might die. Ning Kong said anxiously. The scholarly man looked in De Ding's direction. He pondered for a few seconds and said helplessly, I'm afraid it's too late to call for help. Moreover, I can't summon the patriarch with just a word. Try your best. If the 2 of you work together and save him from the chaos, it shouldn't be too difficult. Saving Qin Hao was the best that Ning Kong and Ning Lai could do together. Then, they would bring him back to De Ding. At that time, Xianyuan Wutian and Ning Tsangsong would come. As long as the scholarly man insisted on not handing over Qin Hao, they wouldn't dare to do anything to Ding. However, Xiaogua, Kair, Duan Zhanfei, and even Dan Gu would probably all be buried here. The Night Princess and the old demon wouldn't be in a good situation either. Yes. Ning Kong and Ning Lai nodded. The two of them admired Qin Hao's talent and temperament. Moreover, this person was the benefactor of the Ning family to begin with. Even though he hadn't shown the slightest bit of grace to their third bloodline, he was still the benefactor of the Ning family. Although he didn't show any kindness to the third lineage, the Ning family still owed him. At this moment, Ning Kong and Ning Lai circulated their Emperor stage power of law and locked their eyes in Yi Ninghong's direction. Once the battle started, they would save Qin Hao and leave as quickly as possible. Senior Ning, are you bullying my master because he's no longer alive? Yi Ninghong forced herself to remain calm as she looked at the struggling eight-winged demon Oriole in the void. However, her heart fell into a bottomless abyss. She knew that even if she joined forces with the eight-winged demon Oriole, they wouldn't be able to shake Ning Tsangsong, who had stepped into the second realm. Old demon Yi is dead. Old man lost an old friend. I'm also very sad. However, the Ning family chose not to interfere in today's matter. This is already a great favor to Western Liang and Northern Borderline. As a senior of the southern region, Old Man hopes that the Night Luo Palace won't fall into enemy hands. Including all the forces here, don't interfere. In the void, an aged voice rang out, carrying with it an irresistible command. Everyone guessed that Ning Ling wouldn't interfere in this matter before, and Palace Master Yi would. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. To the Ning family, interfering wasn't too much because the Night Luo Palace was only targeting the Xianyuan family. However, at this moment, the patriarch of the Ning family appeared and didn't allow Palace Master Yi to interfere. It was obvious that he was deliberately suppressing Qin Hao and making him lose his most powerful backer. This could be considered as a response to the, "Who do you think you are?" After all, Ning Hongxian was Ning Tsangsong's descendant, and Qin Hao had trampled on the Ning family. Qin Hao naturally understood this point, but he didn't regret making him the prime minister and making Ning Hongxian the emperor. If he could do it all over again, he would still say, "Who do you think you are?" Actually, old man is doing this for your own good. Previously, the coiling dragon wonder at the source of the South River caused a huge commotion in the southern region. I'm sure everyone has heard about it. Ning Tsangsong's voice sounded in the void again. The coiling dragon peak at the source of the South River collapsed, causing heavy casualties among the disciples of the various sects. If that's all, it's fine. However, losing the coiling dragon wonder is definitely a disaster for the martial artists of the southern region. It had been 800 years since the disciples of the various sects of the southern region went to climb the coiling dragon peak to stimulate their potential. Once the wonder was destroyed, it was equivalent to cutting off a path for the disciples of the various sects to increase their cultivation. Of course, the loss was not small. And I heard that the creator of the wonder, the Spirit Emperor, appeared and bestowed his power of inheritance and the dragon spirit technique to a fated person present, someone else said with a hint of jealousy. That's right. Ning Tsangsong's voice replied in the void. The descendant of the Golden Light City branch of the Ning family was escorted back safely by this fated person. The Transcendent once said that it was his master who received the Spirit Emperor's inheritance. In fact, from a personal standpoint, the old man felt guilty in his heart. He felt guilty toward this fated person. However, the coiling dragon wonder belongs to the people of the southern region. It's not unique to the Ning family. For the past 800 years, it has benefited all the sects and clans. I, Ning Tsangsong, am not a heartless person. However, I can't watch the Spirit Emperor's inheritance be taken away by an outsider and become the treasure of Western Liang. Therefore, I told him not to interfere in this matter. This is already the most that the Ning family can do. Young Pavilion Master Qin, you should understand the old man's actions, right? The voice in the void was like a ruthless sword that stabbed at Qin Hao's position. It pushed him to the heart of the storm and became the target of public criticism. End of chapter. Chapter 1301. Whose Inheritance? Qin Hao stood on the coiling dragon, crossed 8 platforms, and broke all record. He found the dragon eye and opened the hidden dragon's secret realm with his peak emperor's will. Then, the mountain collapsed, and the spirit of the formation came out. It took the power of the essence crystal mountain into Qin Hao's body and turned into the dragon spirit, forming the Dharma idol. Treasures always belonged to those who were strong. It had nothing to do with one's realm. Besides, the coiling dragon wonder was created by the spirit emperor. Qin Hao opened the hidden dragon's secret realm for Li Wanji, and the dragon spirit was a gift from the other party to help Qin Hao return to the emperor realm. As for the final evolution of the Dharma idol into another killer move, it was Qin Hao's own choice. However, regardless of which reason it was, whether it was personal or by chance, Qin Hao had never done anything outrageous to the sects of the southern domain. If the dragon spirit was the ultimate treasure of any sect, and Qin Hao took it, he had a reason to return it. However, Qin Hao took it, and it was a gift from the spirit emperor himself. What did it have to do with the southern region? What did it have to do with the Ning family? All of this seemed to be Ning Sangsong's magnanimity. In fact, he made Qin Hao the public enemy of the southern region. His heart was extremely vicious. After all, he didn't allow Sect Master Yi to interfere before. The Nightnet Palace helped Qin Hao fight against the Xianyuan family. What did it have to do with the Ning family? Ning Sangsong made it clear that he wanted Qin Hao dead. If he didn't do anything, he would be killing him without spilling blood. No, master, I didn't say. In the distance, Ning Chaofan hurriedly defended himself. As soon as he spoke, the power that suppressed heaven and earth in the void was immediately filled with great killing intent. It was like the mouth of a fierce beast that wanted to swallow him whole. Transcendent. Qin Hao interrupted him, and then he looked at Ning Chaofan, who was filled with powerlessness, and said, "Stick to your duty and live on peacefully." These words conveyed Qin Hao's incomparable trust. As long as Qin Hao was alive, he would not interfere. Ning Chaofan's eyes turned red. Even though he was the young lord of Golden Light City, how could he compare to a direct descendant? Not to mention the old ancestor of the Ning family, even if he wanted to see Ning Lingjue, he would have to bow 3 times and kowtow 9 times. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He simply didn't have the chance to talk to the person in power. And Teacher understood all of this. The ancestor of the Ning family had framed him, but his teacher still believed him. Moreover, from the very beginning, he had severed their master-disciple relationship and given him the treasured armor that he had always dreamed of. Every single one of these things was because Qin Hao had left him a way out and protected him. At this moment, Ning Chaofan's heart felt like it was being torn apart. However, there was also a pair of large hands protecting him, causing him to struggle and suffer incomparable pain. I naturally understand old ancestor Ning's words. If one day I step into the peerless Empyrean throne, I will definitely return to Ning Wu and give my sincere thanks to the Ning family. Qin Hao's heart was calm, but his voice was filled with endless killing intent. It's good that you understand. As for giving thanks, I hope you will have the chance in the future. In the void, the old man's cold laughter echoed. If he still wanted to take revenge on the Ning family, then Qin Hao would die today. There would never be such a day. Ha ha ha! Xianyuan Wuba laughed. Yang Kong laughed wildly. He had seen methods that were even more brilliant than his own. The Ning family was too good at handling matters. Not to mention gratitude, they first cut off Qin Hao's wings and then made him the public enemy of the southern domain. Not to mention the Xianyuan family, even the other sect wouldn't let Qin Hao leave safely. Pavilion Master Qin, hand over the Spirit Emperor's inheritance, and old man will not make things difficult for you. Yang Tai took a step forward and said. In an instant, all the experts of the holy halls came out. Every one of them surged with terrifying flames that burned through half of the sky of Golden Light City. Hand over the Spirit Emperor's inheritance. Elder Wan of the Spiritual Beast sect said hoarsely. Hand over the Spirit Emperor's inheritance. The Western Liang people are not worthy of our southern domain's treasure. Pavilion Master Qin, I respect you. I don't mean to bully you, but the Spirit Emperor's inheritance will not fall into the hands of others. Li Yaxu, the Crown Prince of the Northern Domain, Tang Du of the Herbal Elixir Hall, Rune Source Pavilion, Music Palace, and all the reputable forces of the Southern Domain came out. The Arhat Palace didn't move. On the Sword Sect's side, the Uncle Master was filled with uncontrollable greed. Who wouldn't be tempted by the Spirit Emperor's inheritance? However, after seeing the pleading eyes of Meng Xiang and Shou Wuk, he finally suppressed his urge to force Qin Hao. Qin Hao was already miserable enough. At this moment, the hundreds of sects of the Southern Domain were on standby. None of them were mediocre. The weakest of them was a peak primitive sovereign. The martial emperors surrounded Dan Go and the others in a circular formation. They were like cages that trapped beasts. In the sky, Ning Tsongsong was personally suppressing the Elixir Pavilion. The Elixir Pavilion had no way out. Looking around, they were surrounded by the most powerful people in the southern region. However, the fierce murderous aura emitted by the sect masters was not something that the weak Yuan monarchs like Nibbling Tube and Biting Iron could withstand. Even Xiaogua, who had followed Qin Hao and seen countless battles and experienced many life and death situations, had never faced such a terrifying situation. A thought of death crept into his heart. Ha ha! Qin Hao's eyes swept across every face and remembered them. He said calmly and coldly, "Are you trying to scare me? You are still too inexperienced. Come on. Master, let's go. We will open up a bloody path for you." The old demon was completely crazy. He fully unleashed his martial emperor cultivation, and a murderous aura filled the air. I can't change the present. However, I can give the sect a glorious future. Disciples, kill. Palace Master Yi shouted sorrowfully. At this moment, the rules of darkness bloomed. The rules of darkness merged with the murderous aura of the old demon. It faintly changed and evolved into an even more terrifying force. Stubborn. Do you want her to die in Ning Wu's hands? In the void, Ning Tsongsong shouted angrily. Along with this, the sound of the eight-winged demon Oriole's bones cracking shook the heavens and earth. She let out a painful cry. You! Palace Master Yi looked at the sky. The eight-winged demon Oriole was the Night Demon Emperor's mount. Rather than a mount, it was more accurate to say that she was the Emperor's confidant. Now that the Night Demon was dead, Mo Ying was Yi Ninghong's only elder. Even so, Yi Ninghong still cried and shouted, "Kill! Ninghong, I am proud of you!" Mo Ying said. Now that the Night Demon was dead, she should have followed him. It was a pity that she could not witness his sect reaching a more glorious peak. However, Mo Ying knew that this day would not be too far away. At this moment, the terrifying Beast Emperor's deathly aura filled the void. The eight-winged demon Oriole was going to self-destruct. Perhaps this was the only way to injure Ning Tsongsong. Li Wanji, are you still not coming out? Qin Hao was furious and let out a dragon's roar. He was not afraid if he was alone. However, he could not bear to see others being burdened by him. Boom! This roar shook the heavens and earth. Time and space froze. Everyone who wanted to kill stopped their actions, including the self-destructing demon Oriole and Ning Tsongsong who had trapped her. Li Wanji? There was no one who didn't know this name. Since the day the coiling dragon wonder collapsed, this name had spread throughout the southern region. It had far surpassed the prestige of this person when he climbed the 7 coiling dragons' wonder. This was because he was the sole emperor. Qin Hao shouted Li Wanji's name. Could it be that the sole emperor was still alive? The 9 heavens' divine emperor. Chapter 1302. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The hearts of the crowd trembled as their gazes followed the direction Qin Hao was looking at. Behind the crowd, in an inconspicuous spot, there was a stooped figure carrying a huge bag on his shoulder, trying to leave quietly. Everyone knew this person's face. Even the disciples of the sect knew who he was. It was Master Li Beitong, who had been famous in the auction world for more than 200 years and was highly respected. He was invited by the Ning family to preside over the auction. However, the person Qin Hao called out was Li Wanji. His eyes were fixed on Li Beitong. Could it be that there was a significant connection between the two? Everyone was confused. Although he was confused, even a fool could see that Master Li wanted to run away. But when he was shouted at by Qin Hao, his sneaky steps involuntarily stopped. Turning around, Li Beitong wanted to cry but had no tears. His eyes were filled with resentment towards Qin Hao. Isn't it good for you to shoulder it alone? Li Beitong thought that Qin Hao was destined to be miserable. Why drag him down with him? He was not afraid of anyone here, but once his identity was revealed, he would not be able to live peacefully in the future. As the Spirit Emperor, how can you be unconcerned and ignore the lives of others? Qin Hao said angrily. Boom. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Li Beitong was the Spirit Emperor? How was that possible? Master Li Yu. Ning Hongxian was so shocked that his soul seemed to fly into the sky. He was the one who invited Li Beitong. If Li Beitong was really Li Wanji, it would be too shocking. What about you? You are a bunch of sanctimonious people. You and your father, your ancestors, you are all the same. Spit. Li Beitong spat. In front of everyone, his stooped body gradually straightened. The wrinkles on his face disappeared and his skin returned to normal. In an instant, he looked like a young man in his 20s. However, his skin was too white and his eyes were slightly sunken. His original plan was to not show up. If Palace Master Yi did not show up, he would use a few enchantment techniques to stir up chaos and create a gust of wind that would sweep Qin Hao, Xiao Han, and Dan Ge away safely. However, the situation changed more and more. Ning Lingjue appeared, and Palace Master Yi used his arrogance to lure out Ning Tsangsong. Gradually, they were out of Li Beitong. The old man of the Ning family was not easy to deal with. He had wanted to leave first, but he had left a trick to help Qin Hao. To success. That would depend on Qin's. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Qin Hao translation. Calm, he was. The Li Beitong. Is he. There were many people present who had seen him at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. After all, Li Wanji had stepped on 7 wheels in a row, so they immediately recognized him. I still have 900 years of life. Even if your ancestor dies, I will not die. Li Wanji cursed. After which, he glanced at Ning Lingjue. The Coiling Dragon Grand Formation belongs to me, I can give it to whoever I want. Why is it that in the mouth of the Ning clan, it's a public property in the southern region? How dare you instigate the crowd? Do you want it? I will give it to you. Whoosh! Li Beitong lifted the huge bag on his back and threw it at Ning Lingjue. Of course, he did not want this bag. He could kill Great Emperor Ning Wu with it. The bag opened in the air. From the opening, hundreds of sharp blades with cold light fell out. They were all Emperor artifacts. There were also all kinds of flying demonic beasts. Apart from that, there were also artifacts and glittering primordial crystal stones. The whole sky was filled with treasures. It was a spectacular sight. These were all items for this auction. Li Beitong had joined the auction as Li Wanji. He wanted to take them all. He had even prepared a huge Qiankuan bag. Unfortunately, his identity was exposed by Qin Hao. He had to give it up. In an instant, these treasures, demonic beasts, and primordial crystal stones fell on the various sections. The scene was instantly chaotic. Moreover, many cultivators with quick reflexes rushed in and began to snatch the treasures, causing the scene to be even more chaotic. Li Wanji, my Xianyuan family is absolutely irreconcilable with you. Hand over your life. Seeing this, Xianyuan Xiu did not need to give an order. The 6 elders of the Xianyuan family all had a tacit understanding. They all ignited their emperor intent laws and gathered the great Tao gravity together. It was as if the void was collapsing as it descended on Li Wanji's head. F***ck your Xianyuan family. Did I steal from you, snatch from you, or sleep with your grandmother? Li Wanji screamed again and again. Yes, he was a 9-star great emperor, but he had not stepped into the second realm. He was also the weakest among the 9-star great emperors. After all, he was an enchanter and was not good at fierce battles. And in front of him, the 6 emperors of the Xianyuan family attacked him, without saying a word, as if they had mad cow disease. Even if Li Wanji could block them, he would not do so without paying a price. And he would not be stupid enough to risk his life with the Xianyuan family. He tore a crack in the void and drilled in. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page. He went in. Oh, you damn dog, if I don't kill you today, old man's surname is not Xianyuan. Chase after him. Xianyuan Xiuzhen was so anxious that his eyes turned red. That sentence of sleeping with your family's old grandmother had deeply pierced his sore spot. A while ago, old ancestor Wutian woke up from the 9-dragon emperor's coffin and issued a death order to the entire family to grind Li Wanji to ashes at all costs. The order of the old ancestor was a heavenly decree. Xianyuan Xiu and the others had already missed a chance to kill Li Wanji. If they saw him again today, they would definitely not allow him to escape again. At this moment, they completely ignored Xianyuan Wuba's call. These 6 people tore the space apart, and their figures flashed in one after another, following Li Wanji's aura. Spirit Emperor, don't go. Old man Ning Tsangsong greets you. In the void, an old voice rolled. Ning Tsangsong's movements were not slow either. He directly abandoned the 8-winged demon Oriole. A large gap flashed in the sky, and an illusory old figure stepped into it. The entire Golden Light City suddenly completely lost the aura of the Ning family's old ancestor. Senior Li, don't go. My old ancestor has ordered you to go to Bao for a chat. Crack. Another crack appeared, and Li Yaxu drilled in. A 9-star great emperor who did not belong to any force, who wouldn't covet him. If they could get their hands on him, they could instantly reverse the current situation and suppress the other 2 sovereigns. The emperor-level powerhouses of the various sects were speechless. At this time, in front of their eyes, cultivators shuttled back and forth, like a group of flies that couldn't be shaken off, competing for the fallen treasures. Qin Hao and Xianyuan Wuba had not yet made a move, but screams and blood had already dyed the ground of Golden Light City red in advance. Do it! Duan Zhanfei roared. This was a great opportunity. Like a demon king coming out of the city, he grasped the void, and the 9-foot dragon spear firmly in his hand. The spear was like a dragon, piercing through the void and charging towards Xianyuan Wuba. You're overestimating yourself. Xianyuan Wuba was furious. Although the elders of the 6 families suddenly ran away, causing the family's combat power to be depleted, it was not the turn of the northern border's 2nd-stage Emperor Yuan to behave atrociously in front of him. At this moment, a majestic golden armor covered Xianyuan Wuba's body. Like a wild beast, Xianyuan Wuba waved his endless fist aura and charged back at Duan Zhanfei. In the blink of an eye, the 2 emperor-level powerhouses collided fiercely. between heaven and earth, there was a soaring explosion, as if the entire Golden Light City was about to collapse under this power. End of this chapter. Chapter 1303. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio. Hold her hand. Spear shadows and fist radiance intertwined as the two emperors clashed. The terrifying power swept across everything, and the ground seemed to be sinking. Golden Light City couldn't withstand it. Those who destroy my Golden Light City will be killed without mercy. Ning Lingjue shouted. Golden Light City was not only the biggest trading city in the southern region, but it was also strategically located. If the city was destroyed, the imperial capital would lose its buffer zone, which would be equivalent to throwing its back to the Sword Sect and Sacred Palace. It was extremely dangerous. But at this moment, Ning Lingjue didn't stop them from fighting. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at Xiao Han's direction. He stepped on the void and went straight down. Obviously, he hadn't given up. He wanted to threaten Xiao Han and force Qin Hao and Duan Zhanfei to submit to him. Marshal Ning would definitely prosper. Although he didn't stop them, Duan Zhanfei and Xianyuan Wuba immediately turned into dazzling flowing light and soared into the sky. In the sky, the two started fighting again. A 9-star Great Emperor was enough to make them wary. No one dared to provoke Ning Lingjue. But at this moment, Ning Lingjue wanted to capture Xiao Han. How could Yi Ninghong let him do as he wished? The power of the Dark Rule merged with the old demon's murderous aura. The rule seemed to have been sublimated and turned into an even more terrifying power. In the void, the rule power formed black thunderbolts that flashed and pierced towards Ning Lingjue like a spear. Ning Lingjue was immediately blocked and could only turn around to face the attack. "Master, hurry!" the old demon shouted. He was in the Origin Emperor realm and forcefully merged the power of the murderous aura into Yi Ninghong's rule power. He wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Qin Hao and the Imperial Censor looked at each other. With a wave of his arm, Xianyuan Feng was thrown towards Gnawing Tube and rushed towards Xianyuan Wuying. "Stop them!" Xianyuan Wuying ordered. The Xianyuan family had many experts following them and still had a huge advantage. But his son Xianyuan Feng was restrained, which made him extremely worried. "Come and fight!" A strong figure stepped out from the team. It was Xianyuan Wuyao. As a top Emperor stage master, he had fought with the Imperial Censor earlier and both of them were evenly matched. When he saw the other party rushing toward him, his competitive spirit was ignited. He formed a spell with both hands and threw an arc blade of primordial chi with a golden luster at the other party. "I'll hold him off," the Imperial Censor said to Qin Hao. His combat power was limited, so he could only rely on Qin Hao to deal with the rest. At this time, behind Xianyuan Wuyao, there were more than 10 venerable level experts who were following him. They were all intercepting Qin Hao. "Those who block me shall die." Qin Hao made a grasping motion and a flaming sword with a jade-like luster appeared in his hand. He used the water wind step and weaved his way through the 3 Yuan venerates in front of him. Sword light flashed. Poochie, poochie, poochie. 3 heads soared into the sky, and then they were burned to ashes in the air. The 3 Yuan venerates were no match for him. How powerful! The disciples of the various sects who had retreated far away were so shocked that their eyes were as round as saucers. When he was fighting with Zhan Changhe and Luo, Qin Hao stood on the stage like a mountain. No matter how many spells bombarded him, he remained unmoved. People could only look up at him. Now, he had made a move. His sword seemed invincible and unstoppable. He could slaughter Yuan venerates like they were dogs. If Qin Hao's sword had been aimed at Changhe Lo, who was playing the zither, then the outcome would have been Changhe Lo was also shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. It turned out that Qin Hao was far stronger than he had imagined. When he had a real sword in his hand, he was more than an emperor. He was as terrifying as a killing god. Elder Wan, stop him. Chang Helua's gaze hardened as he ordered. Actually, he didn't need to say anything. Master Tang, Elder Wan, the Grand Elder of the Music Palace, and many other people of the southern region had already made their move. Everyone knew that Qin Hao couldn't obtain the Spirit Emperor's inheritance as long as Li Wanji wasn't dead. However, the dragon spirit of the coiling dragon peak was definitely an extremely precious existence that everyone wanted. Hand over the dragon spirit and the old man will spare your life. Kneel down and apologize to the spirit beast sect. Pavilion Master Qin, the southern region isn't a place where you can behave atrociously. Many monarch-grade almighties blocked Qin Hao's path in the blink of an eye, providing the Xianyuan family with a huge boost. Tang Du, Wan Hun Yulushin, it's been a long time since I last exchanged pointers with you. Today is a rare opportunity. I, Meng Xiang, would like to exchange a few moves with the three of you. Whoosh, whoosh. In the sky, dozens of sharp sword qi pierced through the air. After the sword qi, Old Meng was already standing next to Qin Hao. He said to Qin Hao, "Go! I will definitely repay your kindness if I don't die today." Qin Hao's blood was boiling. There were still some virtuous people in the southern region. He would remember Old Meng of the sword sect. Then, Qin Hao continued forward. Wherever his sword light passed, no Yuan venerate of the Xianyuan family was a match for him. No one below the Yuan venerate could stop him. "I'll deal with you." Yu Qianyang's body was burning with flames. He had long been unhappy with Qin Hao and wouldn't allow him to save someone. Do you think that intent realm can't determine the level of one's strength? Suddenly, a cold voice was heard. Then, Yu Qianyang, who was about to make a move, realized that everyone in front of him had completely disappeared. He was no longer in Golden Light City. Around him was a world of nothingness. In this world, endless sword chimes reverberated. Then, an arrogant figure stepped forward in front of him. Shou Wuk. Yu Qianyang's heart trembled. Of course, he knew that he had fallen into the other party's sword intent realm. It was obvious that he couldn't avoid this battle. In an instant, inside the Nihility sword realm, raging flames soared into the sky and tens of thousands of sword chimes reverberated in the air. This was the battle between the #1 prodigy of the southern region. Shou Wuk. Qin Hao's vast emperor's consciousness spread out and clearly explored the entire battlefield. Yu Qianyang had been blocked by Shou Wuk and now owed the sword sect a favor. Die! At that moment, the furnace behind him roared with a roar and a scorching heat wave. Tang Xingqian lifted the furnace and smashed it heavily on Qin Hao's back. Suddenly, flames exploded and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. This blow didn't seem like it had hit a person's body at all. It was more like it had hit a hard steel plate. A flash of sword light flashed in front of Tang Xingqian's eyes. Then, he found it more and more difficult to breathe. His primordial soul had already dissipated in the sword light. He clutched his throat with both hands and looked at the figure in front of him that was getting farther and farther away. That figure had slashed at him with his sword but didn't even turn around to look at him. How sad was that? Before this, he had mocked him for being qualified to suppress the southern region. Now, Tang Xingqian finally understood Qin Hao's qualifications. However, from now on, he would never see the wonderful world or smell the flowers of the southern region. Xingqian, my nephew. Tang Du looked at the young man who had fallen to the ground full of vitality. That was supposed to be a young man who would achieve great things in the future and shoulder the hope of the herbal medicine hall. Now, Qin Hao had cruelly slit his throat. Qin Hao continued to move forward. Tang Xingqian's death and Tang Du's cries had nothing to do with him. In his eyes, there was only Xiao Han. He was getting closer and closer. Perhaps he could take a small step forward and hold Xiao Han's hand. However, the flies around him that he couldn't kill were really annoying. They were so noisy that his head was buzzing. In the distance, Xiaogua looked at Qin Hao, who was trapped in the attacks of primordial qi. 2 streams of hot tears flowed out of his eyes. At this moment, Qin Hao was completely buried by the Xianyuan family's spells. However, he didn't care at all. He faced the endless attacks above his head and pressed forward. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1304. Qian Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Fatal. Thunderbolts struck down, tornadoes suppressed, and giant magma was condensed by a high-grade spell technique. All of these attacks smashed down on Qin Hao's head. More and more wounds appeared on his body, but he still stood tall and didn't stop. High up in the sky, the 2 Thearchs fought, and the sound of explosions could be heard clearly. The outcome of the battle between Duan Zhanfei and Xianyuan Wuba was about to be revealed. On the ground, Yining Hong teamed up with the old demon to stop Ning Lingjue from entering the battle. Meanwhile, the Imperial Censor kept Xianyuan Wuyao in check. The other sect masters took the chance to steal Qin Hao's dragon spirit energy. The sword sect's elder Meng fought alone. No one could stay out of the huge and chaotic battle. The 3 sovereigns and 4 sects were all involved, and the various prodigies started to fight fiercely. Shouwuk fought fiercely against Yu Qianyang, and Luo Ho from the Arhat Palace stared at Yang Tai from the Sacred Hall, making him not dare to make a move. Tang Xingchen ambushed Qin Hao from behind, but he was stabbed in the throat and died on the spot. Xiaogua and Ke were also under pressure, and they weren't any weaker than Qin Hao. The 5,000 elite troops of the Xianyuan family, led by a few emperor-level generals, charged toward Nibbling Tube and Biting Iron. If it weren't for Gu Huangshou and the strong cultivators of the Night Net Palace, the old geezers of the Elixir Pavilion wouldn't have survived for more than 5 breaths. Even so, there were still more than a dozen of Dan Ji's alchemists who were torn to pieces by the powerful Yuan Qi. Yuan King was really too weak. Roar! The dog spirit stood tall and spat out flames from its mouth. Wherever it touched, the Xianyuan family soldiers were turned into ashes. Kair circled around Dan Ji's camp. She wanted to chase after Qin Hao and save Xiao Han. However, she knew that if she went in that kind of cruel battle, she would only be a burden to the other party. All she could do was try her best to protect Dan Gu and the others and reduce the casualties as much as possible. Come on, come and kill me. If you have the ability, come and stab me. Gnawing Tube supported Xianyuan Feng, making Xianyuan Feng's chest collide with the Xianyuan family's long spear. However, wherever he passed, everyone would flee in panic. Xianyuan Feng's shoulders were crushed, and his internal organs were corroded by Qin Hao's Red Lotus tyrannical fire. With this life-saving card, Gnawing Tube was able to survive until now. Beside him, Iron Bite watched as Dan Gu and the others fell into pools of blood one after another. Every time a white-robed figure fell, he felt as if his heart would shatter. A group of more than 40 people left Western Liang to look for Qin Hao. They claimed that they were going to make a name for themselves in the southern region. Now, more than 10 people had already died. Dan Gu will definitely take revenge for this. Iron Bite's eyes were bloodshot as he said hoarsely, "Bang!" A monstrous, burly figure charged over from the side. He swung his huge fist and knocked away the long spear that was stabbing towards Iron Bite. Then, a huge hand that did not seem human reached out and crushed the attacker's head. "Elder Iron Bite Dongfang, you guys break through first." Qi Xiaogua absorbed her soul into her body and entered her beast form. She had curved horns on her head, and her body was covered in rough iron armor. She had an oxtail behind her buttocks, and she looked like an ox demon, full of power. Right now, they needed to buy time and let the weakest people break through first. If Qin Hao saved Xiao Han and then returned to save them, they would be in even more danger. "Let's go." Gu Huangsho's upper body was bare, but he did not look old at all. His entire body was filled with muscles. He held a smelting hammer in his hand and smashed it down violently, smashing apart an emperor-level general of the Xianyuan clan. The eastern position that this general was guarding had been completely breached. Thank you, old man." Niu Tong's gratitude could not be expressed in words. Gu Huang spat out a mouthful of shocking blood. He endured his injuries and said, "Let's go quickly." At this moment, Niu Tong discovered that there was a pebble-sized bloody hole under Gu Huang's ribs. This was a spear wound. The seemingly tyrannical strike just now had killed the emperor-rank expert of the Xianyuan family, but in reality, Gu Huang's injury had been exchanged for life. He had taken the opponent's stab head-on. Niu Tong did not dare to stay any longer. He clamped Xianyuan Feng under his armpit with one hand and grabbed Iron Bite's hair with the other. A group of alchemists from Dan Gu followed behind him. They all summoned their origin wings and flew towards the east. "Feng-er, leave my Feng-er behind." Xianyuan Wuying pointed towards the east and shouted hoarsely. Xianyuan Feng was his only lifeline. How could he let Dan Ji's old ghost take him away? Roar! The eight-winged black dragon moved. Its dragon body twisted on the spot and instantly descended above Niu Tong and the others. Its mighty dragon aura spread out. Niu Tong and the others were immediately dumbfounded. They were so frightened that their souls almost left their bodies. Screech! At this moment, a behemoth descended from the sky and stretched out its sharp claws. Like an eagle catching a snake, it clasped the black dragon's body and forced it to lie on the ground. "Go!" Emoing spoke in human language. "None of you can leave." Xianyuan Wuying stepped on the ground and rushed straight over. He should have been guarding Xiao Han's side to prevent Qin Hao from attacking. But at this moment, he had no choice but to leave. Moreover, he believed that even without his protection, Qin Hao would still not be able to rescue Xiao Han. Xianyuan Wuying, enough is enough. Duanmu Qinghui also moved and blocked the side of Dan Ji's group, preventing Xianyuan Wuying from coming forward. "You think you can stop me?" Xianyuan Wuying roared. This Duanmu Qinghui was simply courting death. But his panicked gaze still landed on Xianyuan Feng. He had to save his son. "You can try," Qing Lao said. He had also comprehended the Emperor Will law, but his understanding was deeper. On the other hand, Xianyuan Wuying had yet to step into the half-step Emperor realm. At this moment there was no need for words. The two immediately launched a fierce battle. "Kill!" Qin Hao's vision was covered by a bloody mist. He didn't know how many people he had killed, but with Xianyuan Wuying's departure, the other party's experts were all restrained. No one could stop him anymore, and he finally stood in front of Xiao Han. At this moment, there were only some weak disciples of the Xianyuan family around Xiao Han, as well as Xianyuan Wuji, who had defeated Duan Ziju in the Emperor Martial competition, and the 4 weak maids. "Take her away," Xianyuan Wuji said calmly, as if he had never doubted that Qin Hao could come. At this moment, he took the initiative to step aside. This action stunned the 4 maids and the other disciples of the Xianyuan family. Although Xianyuan Wuji was no match for Qin Hao, he could still struggle a little. If Xianyuan Wuji was allowed to take her away in public, Xianyuan Wuji's consequences would be very miserable. Withdraw from the Xianyuan family and live incognito. Qin Hao, who was covered in the smell of blood, stepped forward and brushed past Xianyuan Wuji. Xianyuan Wuji fought for a way out for himself by taking action, and the entire Xianyuan family would definitely pay the price of extermination because of Xiao Han's matter. "Don't kill us," the 4 maids said in fear. "Get lost." Qin Hao directly pulled Xiao Han's hand. But at this moment, the 4 frightened maids revealed ferocious expressions. A sword appeared in each of their hands out of thin air. 4 sword lights attacked at an incomparably fast speed. In a flash, they all pierced into Qin Hao's chest. When the four maids attacked with their swords, they didn't panic at all. Instead, they were full of confidence. This was because they were all Emperor Realm powerhouses. Boom, boom, boom. 4 golden flames rose into the sky. In front of the flames, Qin Hao's bloody figure seemed so small. Chapter 1305. Ha ha ha! Xianyuan Wuying withdrew from the battle with Qing Lao. He looked back and saw that Qin Hao had been stabbed 4 times. He laughed in satisfaction and mocked coldly, "You want to save someone with this little ability? Or die?" He had placed 4 flower vases by Xiao Han's side just for the sake of pleasing the eye? No, they were also extremely talented clansmen of the Xianyuan clan. They were there to prevent such a scene. Qin Hao had thrown himself into the trap. In an instant, countless experts stopped moving. Their hearts seemed to have stopped beating as well. They stared blankly at the figure that was already standing in front of Xiao Han. Had he failed in the end? Even though his talent was peerless, and he possessed the aura of an emperor that suppressed the southern region, he was invincible under the Emperor realm. But in the end, he had stopped in front of his true love. He was only a hair's breadth away. How cruel! A boundless sense of tragedy surged from everyone's hearts to their bodies. In order to help him, many experts of the southern region had taken the pressure and joined in. But he had still failed. Today, not only had everyone participated in Ning Wu's grand auction that was held once every 5 years, but they had also witnessed the birth and fall of a genius. No, perhaps after today, he should be called a peerless genius. His alchemy, body refinement, vitality, sword Tao, and control of fire were all proficient. He had amazed the experts of various sections. No one of his age in the southern region could compete with him. They were not even worthy of competing with him. Even if there were outstanding geniuses like Shou Wuk and Yu Qianyang, there was no one in the southern region who could gather so many ultimate skills and reach Qin Hao's level. For the divine wilderness continent, Qin Hao's fall was a tragedy. However, at this moment, the 4 maidservants who had stabbed Qin Hao were not excited at all. The incomparably strong confidence on their faces turned into shock in the blink of an eye. Faintly, there was even some fear in their eyes. They realized that the swords in their hands did not stab a person. Instead, it was like an incomparably hard, towering ancient rock that radiated endless vitality. The swords had penetrated 3 inches but could not go any further. And now, the 4 emperor armaments were tightly clamped together. They suddenly discovered that it seemed that they were the ones being restricted. Especially when they were so close to Qin Hao, that majestic aura gave them the illusion that they were facing a high and mighty great emperor. The 4 ignorant primitive emperors were the insignificant ones. "This is the killing move you set up?" Qin Hao looked at Xianyuan Wuying. Then, a dazzling silver light bloomed. His body was covered by mercury that appeared out of nowhere. The mercury flowed like a river in the starry sky. It reached Qin Hao's feet and spread to the top of his head, covering his entire body. When the dazzling silver light dissipated, everyone discovered that Qin Hao's body was covered in silver armor. This set of armor was long and slender, and it was filled with boundless power. Looking at it from afar, it gave off a sacred and dignified atmosphere. Especially when the 12 wings on Qin Hao's back bloomed, the heaven and earth lost their color, leaving only the dazzling silver light. In Golden Light City, in front of everyone's eyes, it was as if a god from the heavenly realm was born. The scene was shocking. Looking at Qin Hao's 12 wings, they couldn't help but worship him. Everyone's legs couldn't help but tremble. Patter! The cold mask closed. On the mask, 2 scarlet pupils stared ahead. Qin Hao waved his hand in the air, and a silver battle bow appeared under his palm. When the battle bow appeared, everyone's hearts seemed to stop. They watched Qin Hao put 4 silver arrows on the bowstring at the same time. That tall figure, at this moment, began to rise again. 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters. The dragon's soul awakened. The dragon roar reverberated around his body, filling the heaven and earth. The sunset mental cultivation method was activated. The destructive aura condensed on the 4 silver arrows, aiming at the faces of the 4 maidservants in front. At this moment, the 4 maidservants completely forgot to dodge. They only knew how to open their eyes wide. They didn't even know where they were. Buzz. In the void, a hair-raising sound of a bow rang out. Everyone saw an incomparably sharp silver light piercing through the glabella of the 4 maidservants at the same time and flying out from the back of their heads. The 4 maidservants suddenly trembled, and the surging golden flames all dissipated. At the same time, they fell to the ground. At the moment of their deaths, their eyes were wide open, as if they were filled with curiosity and reverence. They wanted to know what method Qin Hao had used to suddenly increase his aura from the 3rd level Yuan Venerate to their level. Although most of them were low-level Yuan Venerates, they were far from being comparable to Xian Yuan Wuying. The strongest among them had just entered the middle level, 4th level Yuan Venerate. However, they were clearly surging with the energy of a monarch. Even if they didn't dodge, they shouldn't have been pierced by the arrow without any hindrance. So much so that they even abandoned the idea of throwing away the monarch weapon. What kind of archery technique was this? It was so powerful. Qin Hao didn't care about the 4 people who had fallen to the ground. He activated 75% of his dragon power and combined it with the divine-grade indestructible samsara art. His physical body and Yuan Qi were beyond the knowledge of ordinary martialists. Then, he shot the arrow with the setting sun cultivation technique. Even the arm of the old man with the broken sword, who had activated his sword's soul, was shot off. At that time, the old man with the broken sword had been a 6th level Yuan Venerate, but he had still almost died on the spot. However, there were only a group of 3rd level Yuan Venerates and a 4th level Yuan Venerate in front of them. More importantly, how could they dodge when they were locked on at such a close distance? 1 arrow and 4 emperors had been destroyed. At this moment, everyone was extremely shocked. Even Elder Meng didn't dare to breathe loudly. Everyone thought that Qin Hao would be torn to pieces by the sword aura of the 4 Yuan Venerates. However, in the blink of an eye, the sacred and gorgeous silver armor was on his body. Qin Hao's aura surged strangely and turned the situation around. The arrow had destroyed the 4 emperors and made Xian Yuan Wuying's unsolvable trap become a joke. Are you still able to laugh so loudly? Qin Hao looked at Xian Yuan Wuying. At this moment, the 4 powerful Yuan Venerates were still piercing his silver armor. However, he was completely standing beside Xiao Han. No one dared to move forward. His whole body was exuding an incomparable heroic spirit. Of course, Xian Yuan Wuying couldn't laugh. He was simply speechless. He would never have expected that the 4 Yuan Venerates, who had been carefully selected from the branches, would be destroyed by Qin Hao with 1 arrow. Although part of the reason was that they had underestimated the enemy. However, Qin Hao's combat strength had crossed a heavenly cycle realm. He was a completely monstrous existence, extremely abnormal. At this moment, Dende had refreshed everyone's worldview. His strength was far stronger than what they had imagined. When they turned back to look at Chang Hello, he was like an ant. Xian Yuan Wuying was silent. However, Qin Hao put another arrow on the bowstring. His aura actually locked on to Xian Yuan Wuying. Everyone couldn't help but cry out in alarm. What was he trying to do? Could it be that Pavilion Master Shiliang thought that he still had the ability to kill Xian Yuan Wuba's twin brother with 1 arrow? He was a peak Yuan Venerate who had just comprehended the laws of the Emperor's will and was about to enter the half-step Emperor realm. Qin Hao's response was to shoot. Moreover, this arrow was even stronger than when he had killed the 4 Yuan Venerates. It was as if all the forces in the world were mobilized by Qin Hao. The sky was filled with his eyes. It was an arrow that couldn't be dodged. The silver arrowhead was wrapped in a ball of flame, as if it was a ball of burning human blood. At this moment, Qin Hao's two souls were opened. The power of the dragon was raised to the extreme. The immortal samsara technique and the setting sun mantra complemented each other. Between heaven and earth, a vast and boundless emperor's might spread. This emperor's might wasn't Xianyuan Wuba, Duan Zhanfei, Ning Lingjue, or Palace Master Yi. Instead, it was an existence that no one had ever felt before. It seemed very illusory, as if it was tightly bound by shackles. And it wanted to break through the shackles and reveal itself to the world. The world was in awe. Within this emperor's might was a kind of power that made one's heart palpitate. This power was of a very high level, so much so that even Xianyuan Wuying's expression changed drastically. Emperor intent law? How is this possible? Xianyuan Wuying, who could no longer maintain his composure as a ruler, shrieked. Qin Hao had locked onto his aura, which clearly contained the power of a great path law. However, it didn't seem to be a law. Xianyuan Wuying didn't know what it was exactly. However, he knew that this arrow would fly over. Perhaps he would be injured. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. A Yuan venerate that can unleash the power of a ruler and even carry the power of a law. What kind of existence are you? What kind of god are you? Xianyuan Wuying roared. He tried his best to communicate with the Emperor intent law. The space around him was filled with a powerful gravitational force that almost deformed it. He desperately told himself not to be afraid. This arrow couldn't hurt him. After all, the gap between their cultivation bases was still very obvious. He could completely dodge it. 1. The hair-raising sound of the bow reverberated once again. In the void, a burning silver arrow was flying toward Xianyuan Wuying from Qin Hao's position, leaving a trail of light behind it. Everyone held their breaths as they witnessed this arrow. A Yuan venerate challenging a peak origin lord. Could it succeed? They were looking forward to it. This arrow would subvert the martial path. If it succeeded, Qin Hao's name would go down in history and he would catch up with the fallen Emperor Nu. Xianyuan Wuying floated in midair, his long hair fluttering. His eyes were fixed on the arrow flying toward him. The arrow hadn't arrived yet, but the power of a great path was already pressing down from the sky like a giant palm, giving him the illusion that he couldn't move. At this moment, he seemed to understand why the 4 maidservants had been shot by Qin Hao's arrow. Unfortunately, he wasn't a maidservant. He was the Prince of Nanao, the brother of the Crown Prince and the future King Pingding. He wouldn't sit back and watch Qin Hao become famous. He wouldn't disgrace the Xianyuan family. 1. The void around Xianyuan Wuying vibrated. Majestic gravity law gushed out frantically, dispersing the power of heaven and earth. At this moment, the arrow that wanted to destroy everything flew over. It was too fast, and Xianyuan Wuying, who was tense, only had time to tilt his head slightly. Splat! One of his ears was taken away by the arrow. Blood splattered, and a mournful cry of endless humiliation echoed in the air. Given his ability, it was true that he hadn't been shot to death by Qin Hao on the spot. This was his pride. However, he had still been hit. You go to hell! Xianyuan Wuying's eye sockets cracked as he let out an earth-shattering roar. However, at this moment, he saw Qin Hao pointing behind him. Xianyuan Wuying froze. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and turned his head abruptly. Splat! Another dazzling fountain of blood splashed out. An arrow burning with human blood flew over Dan Ji's camp and pierced through Xianyuan Feng's heart. Save? Or kill? Qin Hao's cold voice spread quietly between heaven and earth, but it was full of endless deterrence. This sentence was given to him by Xianyuan Wuying. With Qin Hao's ability, he didn't deserve to save Xiaohan. Now, Qin Hao was returning the favor to the insufferably arrogant second prince, who was the one who didn't deserve to save, and couldn't save. No! Xianyuan Wuying shouted with all his might. His roar was so loud that the corner of his mouth was torn. It was as if the arrow that flew through Xianyuan Feng's body had also pierced through his heart. At this moment, he completely understood that Qin Hao had never thought of killing him. The pavilion master of Xilyang only wanted to tell the high and mighty second prince. There was no one in the world that he could save, and no one that he could destroy. What can the world do to stop him? End of chapter. Chapter 1306. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. The second coming, Xianyuan Mi had lost. Xianyuan Wuying had suffered a crushing defeat. He had arranged for the 4 sovereigns to wait for him to get rid of Qin Hao. When Qin Hao was hit by 4 swords, he laughed and said, "Save him, or die." His sarcasm was undisguised. However, the truth was that Qin Hao had destroyed 4 emperors and protected his beloved. He had broken the trap and pointed the arrow at Xianyuan Wuying. He had killed Xianyuan Feng, whom he wanted to save, and returned the favor. Save him or kill him? Who was the more incompetent? Everyone suddenly realized that Qin Hao's target had not been Xianyuan Wuying from the beginning. He had used the power of heaven and earth to create an illusion to show his determination. He wanted Xianyuan Wuying to believe that the arrow was aimed at him. At that moment, Xianyuan Wuying had dodged. He wanted to protect the dignity of the Xianyuan clan. He could not be hit by Qin Hao. But because he had dodged, the arrow had taken his son's life. In fact, the person who had killed Xianyuan Feng was his father. If he had not dodged and taken the arrow, Xianyuan Feng would not have died. What a powerful calculation and exquisite archery! He had even taken the enemy's mentality into consideration. It turned out that Qin Hao was not only powerful in terms of strength, but his strategy was also better than Xianyuan Wuying's. What was more ridiculous was that Xianyuan Wuying's own strength and his family's lineup were far superior to Qin Hao's. But in the end, the person who was powerless was the second prince. Everyone's heart was deeply shocked. Although Xianyuan Wuying had been tricked, he was not the only one who had been tricked. Every cultivator present thought that the arrow was aimed at Xianyuan Wuying. Qin Hao had fooled everyone. Boom! At that moment, the sound of something falling came from the sky. Everyone looked up and saw a golden shadow falling. Looking at the falling body, everyone was shocked. It was Xianyuan Wuba. Xianyuan Wuba's hair was disheveled, and his golden armor was full of holes. His flesh and blood could be seen in the holes. Blood flowed along his armor to the ground. With his fighting strength greatly reduced, he spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his body swayed, about to fall. Big brother! Xianyuan Wuyao was extremely shocked. He couldn't care less about the fight with the monster trainer. He leaped into the air and stabilized the other party. Xianyuan Wuba was actually injured. He's more seriously injured than I am. Xianyuan Wuba raised his head and glared at the sky. However, fear flashed through his eyes. The northern frontier warlord was the craziest person he had ever met. Go! A voice reverberated in the sky. A spatial crack extended down, descending upon where Qin Hao and Xiao Han were. The two of them seemed to be swallowed up by space, disappearing from where they stood. At that moment, an emperor's stage aura rushed madly towards the east. Seeing this, Duanmu Qinghui tore open a crack and swept up the remnants of Dan Ji's group to chase after the departing Emperor Qi. Wuying stopped them. Xianyuan Wuba stepped forward, feeling as if his head was about to explode. His spirit had also been shaken by Duan Zhanfei's Emperor Will rules. Recalling the scene of the battle, he still had lingering fears. However, Xianyuan Wuying seemed to have lost his soul as he stared blankly at Xianyuan Feng's corpse, completely ignoring Xianyuan Wuba's orders. Go! Seeing this, the imperial censor clenched his fist, and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth surged madly. 100-foot-long saber condensed in his hand, and the saber aura burst forth. It was as if it could split a mountain, cutting down in front of the Xianyuan family army. The terrifying saber aura seemed to have turned into a rolling wave, and the Xianyuan family army was sent flying into the air. At that moment, an even stronger Emperor Qi than Duan Zhanfei's bloomed. The imperial censor swept up Xiaogua, Ke and Gu Huangshou, and disappeared in the east. A loud shout came from afar. The Xianyuan family of the southern region is dead. This shout was earth-shattering. It was extremely confident, and no one dared to question it. Another emperor's stage expert. Elder Meng looked at the departing imperial censor, his eyes filled with shock. This person's cultivation was clearly far above the warlord's, but why had he hidden himself? However, the imperial censor had left, and no one could answer him. When everyone regained their senses, they realized that Palace Master Yi Moing and the Nightnet Palace disciples had all disappeared. Whoosh! A gust of cold wind blew over. However, the southern region's 4 seasons were like summer, and thousands of flowers bloomed. In fact, there was only a warm wind and no cold wind. However, everyone felt an incomparable chill in their hearts. The Xianyuan family had the absolute advantage in this battle, and they should have crushed Dan Go. In fact, the Xianyuan family had suffered even more casualties. Xianyuan Wuba had been seriously injured, Xianyuan Wuying had lost an ear, and even some descendants of the royal family had died. Countless Yuan sovereigns and Yuan venerates had died. On the other hand, Dan Go had only left behind a dozen corpses of old Yuan monarchs. Even Princess Daliao had been rescued by Qin Hao. Elder Meng and the others couldn't understand. Although the Sword Sect, Arhat Palace, and Nightnet Palace had more or less helped Dan Go, the Xianyuan family shouldn't have been beaten to such a state. In essence, Elder Meng hadn't interfered in the battle between Dan Gu and the Xianyuan family. He had only stopped Tang Du and a bunch of scheming scum. Meng Xiang, I swear that from today onwards, the herbal elixir hall and all the medicine shops and pill shops under it will never sell a single pill to the Sword Sect disciples. We won't treat any injured members of the Sword Sect. Tang Du's eyes were red as he said hoarsely. He was holding Tang Xingchen's corpse in his arms. The dragon soul was originally given to Pavilion Master Qin by Li Wanji. You should be prepared to pay the price if you want to take it by force. As for your nephew, his skills are inferior. Elder Meng turned around and walked back to the Sword Sect's camp. In martial arts, the strong killed and the weak were slaughtered. There was no such thing as sympathy. If Tang Xingchen had been stronger, the person who would have died would have been Qin Hao. Wuk returned to the sect. Martial Granduncle glared at Meng Xiang with some dissatisfaction. It was already a great favor for the Sword Sect to not force Qin Hao. Meng Xiang had acted on his own initiative and blocked Tang Du for Qin Hao. This was somewhat inconsiderate. Therefore, he was afraid that the Xianyuan family would target him and cause the Sword Sect disciples to have no pills to buy from the herbal elixir hall. Can't the intent realm determine the level of a martial artist's strength? Shouwuk walked past Yu Qianyang and followed the group, disappearing from everyone's sight. However, Yu Qianyang didn't dare to respond to this sentence. At this time, his whole body was soaked in cold sweat. Although the two of them didn't fight in front of everyone, he had lost miserably in the world of Sword Realm. The Sword Sect left, the Arhat Palace also left, and the various sects who were watching the battle from afar also returned with their disciples. For a time, the grand and noisy auction house became incomparably desolate. The ground was filled with the corpses of the Xianyuan family members. Ning Jingshan, why didn't you stop them just now? At this time, a loud and angry shout exploded. Ning Ling looked in despair at the City Lord of Golden Light City, who was standing quietly in the corner. City Lord Ning looked very calm, as if it had nothing to do with him. However, in the battle, many experts were restrained. Great Emperor Ningwu was also completely entangled by Palace Master Yi. Only the City Lord of Golden Light City seemed to be an outsider who had plenty of time and opportunities to move freely. City Lord Ning was also at the Emperor realm, and his combat strength couldn't be underestimated. If he entered the battle, it would be enough to tilt the balance. Perhaps the result would be completely different. If Qin Hao wanted to leave, it would be very difficult for him. But today, City Lord Ning didn't even move a finger except for breaking a cup. Great Emperor Ningwu was very dissatisfied. He was in a terrible mood. Pavilion Master Shiliang is not guilty. City Lord Ning stood up, but his face was still very calm when he replied. In fact, he wanted to say that Qin Hao wasn't wrong, and he even did a good job. Do you know what you are saying? Ning Lingjue was already furious as he stared at Ning Jingshan. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1307. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin Convalescence. The aura of a 9-star emperor descended. Ning Lingjue stepped on the air, and it felt like he was stepping on Ning Jingshan's head. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of City Lord Ning's mouth. Father! Ning Chaofan felt Great Emperor Ning Wu's killing intent. Ning Hongxian and Ning Feiyang didn't dare to make a sound. In the past, the southern region was in turmoil. Heroes ruled over each other, and the people had no way to make a living. The ancestor of the Heavenly Road led his people out of the forest and formed a group of 39 heroes. After thousands of years, Ning Wu still exists, but the alliance has withered. Only the Ning family remains. May I ask Great Emperor Ning Wu, what was the purpose of the alliance? Suddenly, a gentle voice sounded. A scholarly person walked over lazily. Ning Lingjue was startled. He didn't recognize this person. Moreover, he couldn't answer. Not only Ning Lingjue, but his 2 sons couldn't answer either. Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to speak here? Ning Hongxian shouted. Although the sects had left, the people of the Xianyuan family were still here. This ignorant scholar dared to embarrass the current Great Emperor Ning Wu. During Ning Wu's golden age, its territory was east of the Southern Sea and north of Tai Feng Mountain. Now, the Southern Sea belongs to the Myriad Cultivator Union, and the southern proud Xianyuan family is arrogant. They dare to cross Tai Feng Mountain and invade Ning Wu's 7 states and 14 counties. May I ask Ning Lingjue, where is your prestige as a great emperor? Could it be that you're venting all of your anger on the people of the branch family? The refined scholar's gaze turned cold, and his tone became extremely sharp as he shouted in a reprimanding tone. How dare you? Ning Lingjue turned his head and shouted. Before he became the great emperor, Ning Wu had already lost some territory. How could he be blamed? Where did this scholarly man come from? He knew the rules of the Ning family and dared to scold him. Pa! The scholarly man threw a letter of challenge at Ning Lingjue. He looked at his 2 sons and said, Qualifications? I came from the Great Ding, and my name is Ning Tianxing. I challenge you on behalf of the Great Ding King. 1 month later, we will determine the ownership of Ning Wu on Songwen Mountain. This battle would determine Ning Wu's future. Looking at the 3 silhouettes leaving in the sky, Ning Lingjue opened his eyes wide. His heart was in turmoil as he muttered absent-mindedly, the 3rd bloodline. At the same time, Xianyuan Wubao was startled. Although he didn't know the identity of Ning Tianxing, he was born in the capital and also had the surname Ning. This information evoked an old story that was buried deep in his heart. Xianyuan Wubao smiled coldly and looked around at the tragic scene. He looked at the corpses of his clansmen. The clan had suffered heavy casualties. However, at the end of the story, the Ning family was also involved in a major incident. This matter could cause Ning Lingjue to step down from the throne. Suddenly, Xianyuan Wubao's mood could not help but be a little better. He took Xianyuan Wuying, who was in a daze, and returned to Nan Ao on the Black Dragon. Half a month later, at the Myriad Cultivator Union. The current state of the Myriad Cultivator Alliance was extremely unstable. There were internal disputes between the two factions and external threats from Xuanyuan's army. The people in the alliance were in a state of panic, as if the flames of war would burn them at any time. The alliance was on the verge of collapse. At this moment, in an elegant and comfortable bamboo grove in the palace of the left faction's first elder Duanmu, a gentle breeze flowed slowly in the courtyard surrounded by a lush bamboo grove. There was a small stream flowing in the courtyard. The clear air came from the bamboo grove, bringing with it a sense of tranquility and fragrance. It blew on the faces of a young man and woman sitting under the pavilion, making the scene even more peaceful. The man held the woman's hand. White hair fluttered in the wind in front of his forehead. The two of them were barefoot in the water. They lowered their heads to look at the small fish in the stream that swam past their feet. Qin Hao's eyes were full of gentleness, but Xiao Han's eyes were still empty and lifeless. She didn't even blink. In the past, I've been thinking about when to put down everything and stay by your side, watching the east rise and the west set, appreciating the picturesque four seasons. Now, I finally have the time. Qin Hao smiled and looked at Xiao Han's rosy cheek. Even though she was unconscious, she was still so pretty and beautiful. As long as he looked at Xiao Han, Qin Hao seemed to be able to forget everything. A gentle breeze blew, scattering Xiao Han's hair. Qin Hao raised his hand and carefully and gently tucked those strands of hair behind her ear. Then, he stood up and picked up the jade bowl on the stone table. He stirred the medicinal soup with a white spoon and blew on it gently before feeding it to Xiao Han's lip. I brewed this myself. In the past, many people were envious of it. Now it's all yours. It's delicious. Xiao Han's lifeless eyes trembled slightly, as if she could feel something. Her little mouth opened and closed with great effort. Good girl. It was just a small movement, but Qin Hao's heart was filled with excitement. Then, he slowly fed the soup to Xiao Han. Your injuries haven't healed yet. Let Miss K do such a small thing. A kind laugh came from behind. Qin Hao turned around slightly and said with a smile, feeding Xiao Han medicine is the most important thing in my life. Qing Lao, Grandmaster Gu. Little brat, this is how you tricked the Xiao family's girl. Grandmaster Gu glared at Qin Hao. Duanmu Qinghui stretched out his hand and gently placed a finger between Xiao Han's eyebrows. His emperors will slowly entered and carefully examined. A moment later, he sighed softly. I don't know if Miss Xiao Han is lucky or if her talent is as monstrous as yours. Even after such injuries, she still has some consciousness left. But if she wants to recover, it won't be easy. Not only would it not be easy, but if it were anyone else, they would have long become an empty shell without a soul. Now, with Qin Hao's heaven-defying alchemy skills and Duanmu Qinghui's half-step Denda methods, they could only do their best to protect that faint wisp of consciousness in the depths of Xiao Han's mind. Now, they were cultivating a spirit. They used the most precious herbs to continuously strengthen Xiao Han's consciousness, allowing that nearly dissipated consciousness to grow and give her the strength to regain control of her body. Xianyuan Wuying is really ruthless. How could he be so heavy-handed to such a beautiful girl? Grandmaster Gu said through gritted teeth. In order to extract the divine soldier from Xiao Han's body, he had used the power of Emperor rank rules to plant the soul-destroying spirit sealing technique in a vain attempt to annihilate Xiao Han's consciousness. Only then could she not resist, and the other party had the chance to take out the scarlet arrow. One could imagine how strong Xiao Han's resistance had been at that time. She knew very well that the scarlet arrow was a treasure that Qin Hao could not lose. I will let the Xianyuan clan know what it means to be even more ruthless, Qin Hao said indifferently. His tone was calm, but it invisibly exuded endless conviction. Duanmu Qinghui and Gu Huangshou felt the air around them fill with a powerful killing intent. Then, the two of them shook their heads. They did not doubt Qin Hao's determination, but it would not be easy to get rid of one of the southern region's 3 sovereigns. They will pay the most painful price for this. At this time, a figure with a cane stepped into the courtyard with great difficulty. Duan Zhanfei did not walk toward Qin Hao. Instead, he walked around the courtyard with his cane. He had been unconscious for more than 10 days and had just woken up last night. After waking up, despite the dissuasion of many people, he had ignored his injuries and kept exercising. He wanted to quicken his blood and body to recover to its peak condition. He knew very well that there was an even crueler battle to be fought. The 9 Heavens Divine Sovereign. Chapter 1308. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The person you're looking for. Qing Lao and Master Gu looked at the source of the voice with admiration. Xianyuan Wuba was stronger than Duan Zhanfei in terms of cultivation level and emperor intent. His origin spirit was also gravity. When the power of his origin spirit was integrated into the law of gravity, the destructive power of a single attribute was extremely shocking. Few people in the same cultivation level could match him unless they met a natural counter. This battle king under Emperor Shao could injure Xianyuan Wuba so severely. Then, he tore the space apart with his willpower and took away Qin Hao and Shao Han. He was really unyielding. Qing Lao and Master Gu were very curious about Duan Zhanfei's battle half a month ago, but they did not have time to watch it. They felt a little regretful. Qin Hao walked slowly. He felt guilty. If he did not climb the coiling dragon peak, Shao Han might not have met with an accident. Before coming to the southern region, he had promised Shao Yi and Duan Zhanfei that he would protect her. But then again, if he did not climb the coiling dragon peak, he would not have met Li Wanji, obtained the dragon spirit Dharma idol, and obtained the 12 sets of Emperor Palace armor. These 12 sets of armor would be very useful in the future. Uncle Duan, Qin Hao said. He lowered his head and stood at the side like a child who had done something wrong and was waiting for his elder to punish him. Martial arts opportunities and danger have existed since ancient times. No one can predict it. I have no right to blame you. If you feel guilty, remember, don't let something like this happen again. Duan Zhanfei looked back at Qin Hao with determination in his eyes. Then, he held his walking stick and walked back and forth tirelessly. Every step he took covered a large distance. But the more pain his body endured, the more painful it was. Your external injuries have healed. The reason why your body is uncoordinated is because there is a hidden danger. I have a way to get rid of it, but you have internal injuries. You need to force out Xianyuan Wuba's emperor intent, Qin Hao replied. Duan Zhanfei was indeed seriously injured, but he was strong enough. Unlike Shao Han, his cultivation was too weak to bear the injury. Therefore, Qin Hao only needed half a day to thoroughly cleanse Duan Zhanfei's physical body with the power of his 3rd source spirits, nether cleansing water, and strengthen it slightly. However, Qin Hao did not have the ability to dissolve the remnant power of Xianyuan Wuba's emperor's will in Duan Zhanfei's internal organs. Duan Zhanfei was stunned, then he nodded and strode out of the courtyard. I'm going to cultivate. The so-called cultivation was to find a secluded place and use one's own emperor will and rules to dissolve Xianyuan Wuba's power. As for Duanmu Qinghui, he was stunned. He was clearly shocked by Qin Hao's methods. This was because the hidden dangers of external injuries were not something an ordinary alchemist could resolve. At the very least, Duanmu Qinghui felt this was a thorny problem. Since Qin Hao had the confidence to say it, Duan Zhanfei naturally wouldn't doubt it. Qin Hao shook his head as he watched the figure stubbornly walk out of the courtyard. Uncle Duan was swift and decisive, and he didn't ask any questions. He didn't hesitate at all, which was very much like the Battle King's style. Then he returned to Xiao Han's side and asked, "What's the situation now?" "Not too good," Duanmu Qinghui said. The 10,000 Cultivator Alliance's forces had retreated, and their main forces had retreated to the main cities to wait for the final battle. At this time, Nan Ao's aerial cavalry was patrolling the surrounding borders. The 10,000 Cultivator Alliance was completely trapped. Qin Hao frowned and fell into deep thought. It wasn't surprising that the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance was trapped. Xianyuan Wuba had suffered such a great loss, and Xianyuan Feng had also died. Nan Ao definitely wouldn't give up. Half a month ago, in the Battle of Golden Light City, Dan Ji's losses weren't small either. Everyone was injured, and more than 10 old alchemists had died. Qin Hao and the others weren't in a hurry to return to Western Liang because Duan Zhanfei couldn't hold on any longer. The Battle King's injuries were too severe. If they didn't stop to treat him, he would be in danger of dying. Qing Lao was benevolent and righteous, so he brought everyone back to the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance. "I'm sorry to have implicated Qing Lao," Qin Hao said apologetically. "Little friend, don't say that. The Xianyuan clan has been coveting the southern border for a long time. If it weren't for the collapse of Panlong Peak and Ning Wu's auction ceremony, I'm afraid their flag would be flying above Feng City now." Qing Lao sighed. Even if he didn't bring Qin Hao back this time, the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance and the Xianyuan clan had reached the point where they couldn't tolerate each other. Now that Qin Hao and the others had joined, Duan Zhanfei and the monster trainers were very strong, giving the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance the strength to resist. In addition, there was a more important reason. It was unknown what medicine the Night Net Palace's palatial Lord Yi had taken, but he was actually dead set on leading the entire sect's disciples to follow the Pill Pavilion. The Night Luo Palace sect was originally in the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance. But in the past, the relationship between the two sides wasn't very harmonious. Now, the whole sect had moved to Feng City and became the strongest force of the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance against the Southern Pride. The 9-star Great Emperor was Qin Hao's most powerful backer. On the other hand, the right faction opposed to Duanmu Qinghui wouldn't easily accommodate Dan Ge and his people. "We need allies." Qin Hao looked at Duanmu Qinghui with wise eyes. This was the only way to solve the dilemma. But Dan Ge couldn't ask for help from Western Liang and the northern borderline. First, it was too far across the southern sea. Distant water couldn't quench the immediate thirst. Second, Qin Hao's people couldn't get out. At the border, the Griffin Legion of the Xianyuan clan was patrolling. Maybe they wouldn't care about a few people who left. But people with strong auras, especially people like Qin Hao and the Censor, who were hated by Xianyuan Wuing to the bone, would undoubtedly be besieged by the masters of the Xianyuan clan as soon as they stepped out of Feng City. Yilong Yuan and Xiao Yi only recognized Qin Hao. After all, the scale of the expedition across the sea was too vast. And at present, allies could only be chosen from the sects of the southern mountain range. Duanmu Qinghui shook his head and smiled bitterly. He also wanted to find help, but the Wanxiu alliance was too weak. He didn't have any deep friendship with the masters of the sections. He only had one childhood friend, Master Gu of the Star Refining Tower. "The Sword Faction and the Arhat Palace," Qin Hao said, his wise eyes more determined. In the Battle of Golden Light City, hundreds of sects wanted to get rid of him. Only the Sword Faction and the Arhat Palace provided some help. But Qin Hao could also see that the higher-ups of the Sword Faction had no intention of helping him. Meng Xiang cherished talent and acted on his own accord. As for the Arhat Palace, the relationship between Luo Yuliang and the old demon was unclear. It was unlikely that the other party would send the entire faction into the battlefield. But Qin Hao still held a glimmer of hope. Otherwise, he could only sit and wait for death. Others can die, but nothing will happen to you. At this moment, A purple-robed figure stepped forward, followed by Kyogwa and the old demon. Imperial Censor. Qin Hao looked at the other party, his eyes darkening. This person's identity was a mystery. Imperial Censor. Duanmu Qinghui and Master Gu bowed slightly. The other party was at the peak of the Emperor's stage. His personal strength was strong enough, and he had Dan Gu behind him. His identity was not light. You don't have to be so polite. If the Wanxiu alliance is destroyed, I will take him away from the southern mountain range at the last moment. The Imperial Censor said coldly. Under the Kylan mask, his deep eyes revealed strong confidence, as if the things he wanted to do could not be restrained by heaven and earth. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere was a little oppressive. Before the last moment, Imperial Censor Dangu already had the idea of running away. Moreover, he only took Qin Hao with him. He didn't even take Xiao Han seriously. This was very discouraging. I won't go with you, Qin Hao said. He stretched out his hand and stroked Xiao Han's face with endless tenderness. Xiao Han sat quietly. Her bare feet stepped into the stream, and her eyes still didn't blink. The Imperial Censor's heart trembled slightly. He said helplessly, I will take her, Kair and Xiao Gua. This is my limit. Duan Zhanfei will cover our retreat. Su Yongfu, the Imperial Censor's dignified eyes looked directly at the old demon, and an oppressive aura bloomed. It would be my honor to die in battle for my master. The old demon's body trembled, and he took the initiative to speak. The Imperial Censor nodded, and a satisfied look appeared in his eyes. Qin Hao had been reborn. The only thing he had done well was to take in the old demon as his imperial servant. With me here, no one will die. If you want to go, go. Qin Hao had never abandoned anyone in his previous life. It's not up to you. The Imperial Censor's tone suddenly turned cold. Qin Hao's gentle eyes shone with sharpness, and he suddenly looked over. In an instant, an extremely powerful aura erupted from the two of them. The two auras were very frightening. Duanmu Qinghui and Master Gu felt as if two 9-star great emperors were standing in front of them. At this moment, the scene was very silent and suffocating. To Qin Hao, no one could threaten him. This was Denda's own pride. But the Imperial Censor was also extremely stubborn. Cough cough. Big brother, the Imperial Censor didn't come to quarrel with you. Kyogwa stepped forward somewhat timidly. He didn't dare to offend these two people. What should he do? He looked at Qing Lao for help. Yes, yes. Someone wants to see you, Qing Lao said hurriedly, almost forgetting the important matter. Who? Qin Hao restrained Denda's aura and asked. At this juncture, Qing Lao wouldn't joke around. Someone you've been searching for a long time. Qing Lao smiled slightly. The 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1309. Feng City was located inland to the south. It used to be the capital of the Zheng dynasty, and was as large as the imperial city of Luoshui. Now that the Zheng dynasty had withdrawn from the ruling stage, the empire was renamed the Wanxiu Alliance. However, Feng City was still the most prosperous city in the south. Duanmu Qinghui used Feng City as the axis to compress his forces and open up a faraway defense line. Relying on the favorable terrain and other strong cities, he stationed his main forces to resist the Xianyuan clan's attack. However, the south of Feng City and the coastal hinterland were all out of control. Feng City's defense line was relatively solid. With the Night Net Palace holding the line, there was no need to worry for the time being. However, the coastal hinterland was a huge hole. Without the coastline, they couldn't send people out to sea to ask for help. All the islands overseas had been seized by the Xianyuan clan. The Xianyuan clan's forces were like a large net that was constantly tightening. The Wanxiu alliance was like a turtle in a jar. Fortunately, the tide had risen recently and the coastline was submerged by the South Sea. Deep-sea monsters often appeared and caused a lot of trouble for the Xianyuan clan. Perhaps Xianyuan Wuba knew that Qin Hao and the others wouldn't risk going out to sea. Therefore, there weren't many troops stationed overseas. The Xianyuan clan didn't even think about attacking from behind. Duanmu Qinghui and Qin Hao's group were all trapped in Feng City's front line. If they broke through Feng City, they would be wiped out in one fell swoop. They wouldn't fight with the deep-sea monsters for the sea. That would only increase the clan's casualties. Even so, Duanmu Qinghui didn't dare to be careless. After some discussion, the right faction divided 3 armies to guard the rear to prevent Xianyuan Wuba from launching a sneak attack. At this moment, in the center of Feng City, a magnificent and ancient imperial palace stood tall. A long time ago, this palace had been filled with the laughter of the Zheng dynasty. But now it was a cold and empty palace. Even though people would come to clean and repair it every once in a while, it was usually closed and looked like a ghost palace. Today it was open. Qin Hao left the bamboo grove and followed Duanmu Qing. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Duanmu Qing and the others stepped into the Zheng dynasty's old palace. Kair stayed behind to take care of Xiaohan. In the magnificent and ancient imperial palace, the discussion hall that used to be worshipped by hundreds of officials was bustling again. However, the crowd in the hall was divided into 2 groups, with one group standing on the left and the other on the right. There were very few people on the left side. Most of them were civil officials, and their tasks were relatively low. Their overall aura was very weak. They were the leftist faction that supported Duanmu Qinghui. On the right, it was completely different. The voices of the people were like a cauldron, and the laughter was endless. The number of people made up 80% of the people in the hall. Moreover, most of them were powerful generals. Occasionally, there would be a weak and scholarly official, but they were also shangshu and prime ministers with strong auras. Any shangshu or prime minister here could directly look down on the group of weak officials on the left. This was the rightist camp of the Myriad Cultivator Alliance. At the very front of the rightist camp, there was a huge armchair made of tiger skin. Sitting on the chair was an old man with a serious expression and a long beard. The old man's bones looked huge. When he stood up, he should be very tall. The aura he exuded was not any weaker than Qing Lao's. Clearly, he was also a half-step Yuan Narch powerhouse. This was the Grand Elder of the right faction of the Myriad Cultivator Union, Xiang Bu. Xiang Bu's status in the Myriad Cultivator Alliance was very high. He was like a local tyrant. Other than Duanmu Qinghui, who dared to stand in front of him, no one else dared to look directly at him. However, with the addition of Dan Gu, Gnawing Iron Bite naturally stood on the left. After all, Qin Lao had helped Qin Hao before. Imperceptibly, this added some momentum to the leftist faction. But compared to the rightist faction, the gap was still obvious. In the huge palace, everyone was chatting and laughing while waiting. In addition, there was also a young man in blue in the hall. He was very special. He stood neither on the left nor the right. He exuded a gentle and elegant temperament, and his pair of clean eyes carefully looked at the hall. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. His eyes looked at every golden coiled dragon pillar, every wall and floor, and even every corner. Finally, his eyes fixed on the highest dragon chair. The young man's eyes were filled with a kind of fascination. Once upon a time, his ancestors sat on that dragon chair. But that was only the past. At this time, Qin Hao stepped into the discussion hall with everyone on his left and right. The hubbub suddenly quieted down as everyone's gazes turned to look at him. Qin Hao had been in the Myriad Cultivator Alliance for half a month. No matter if it was the leftist faction or the rightist faction, everyone was familiar with him. They knew that this kid in his early 20s was the master of Shiliang Dan Go, and his alchemy skills were extraordinary. They also knew that half a month ago, Dan Ge had fought with the Xianyuan family in Golden Light City. However, Qin Hao was not familiar with them. Duanmu Qinghui, your face is really big. At this time, Xiang Bu spoke. He slightly turned his body. His voice was very deep, and his eyes were extremely dissatisfied. He had waited for too long. If not for his fear of Palace Lord Yi, he probably would not have been in the mood to wait for Qin Hao. Your face is usually bigger than mine, Qin Lao coldly replied, and then stood on the left. The first elder returned. Immediately, the low-ranking civil official on the left breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat off his face, feeling great pressure. Elder Xiang, hello everyone, Qin Hao simply said. Living under someone else's roof, this was the proper etiquette. But in his heart, he did not have much respect for them. After all, they were not familiar with each other. After this, Qin Hao's gaze fell on the blue-clothed youth. As for the blue-clothed youth, he also turned around and looked at Qin Hao with a smile. Their gazes met. Qin Hao could not help but be surprised and somewhat excited. Brother Qinchi, it's actually you. Brother Qin Hao, long time no see, Zheng Qinchi said. He was also very excited. He strode over and patted Qin Hao's shoulder. End of chapter. Chapter 1310. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. The hierarchy of ruler and minister. The imperial martial competition seemed to have happened just last night. Qin Hao had defeated all the geniuses and become the champion. He had withstood the pressure from all sides and become the prince consort. He had finally married the princess. Although Zheng Qinchi had stopped in the top 10, his battle with Yi Shuihan had still received high praise from the crowd and Qin Hao's approval. Qin Hao knew Yi Shuihan's talent and ability best. He did not have the upper hand in the battle with Zheng Qinchi. In the end, they both suppressed their killing moves and wanted the other to win. Because they both held back, they both lost the qualification to advance. However, that battle left a deep impression in the hearts of the Beijiang sects and the audience. You really made me look for you. Qin Hao smiled bitterly. That day, Zheng Qinchi had left an ancient token of the Zheng tribe, inviting him to participate in the divine palace omen and travel together. If he had not been looking for Zheng Qinchi, the series of events would not have happened. However, before he reached the ruins of Nanlu, he unexpectedly met Zheng Qinchi in the Wan Cultivator Alliance. I'm really sorry. It's all because of me that I brought you so much trouble. Zheng Qinchi's face was full of regret. He obviously knew what had happened in Golden Light City. Qin Hao arrived in the southern region and landed at Ping City Harbor. Ping City was the most prosperous harbor, but its location was not the closest to western Liang. In the Wan Cultivator Alliance, there was a mountain range in the shape of an eagle's head that extended to the South Sea. It was called Eagle Head Harbor. Zheng Qinchi felt that Qin Hao would land at Eagle Head Harbor. He had already ordered some clansmen to be stationed there in advance to welcome him. It was not difficult to find him at all. However, due to a strange combination of factors, fortunately you're safe. Just take it as an experience. Qin Hao smiled in relief. His smile was somewhat forced. Xiao Han's spiritual sense had been cruelly damaged. It was not something that could be easily covered up by saying that he was safe. However, Zheng Qinchi was not at fault. How could he be blamed for it? The Xianyuan family will pay the price. Zheng Qinchi secretly clenched his fists, his face full of hatred. Although he was not responsible for Xiao Han's matter, he had his own reasons. Moreover, Qin Hao was invited by him and was already a guest of the Zheng tribe. Of course, the Zheng family had a part to play in the revenge. Duanmu Qinghui greets Your Highness Qinchi. As they spoke, Qin Lao walked over and knelt in front of Zheng Qinchi. The people of the left faction also kowtowed. Great Elder Qin Lao, please rise. The Jing family is no longer a royal family. Jing Qingqi was flattered and hurriedly helped Qing Lao up. He told the civil officials of the left faction not to salute. At this moment, the rightist faction was completely unperturbed. What's going on? Qin Hao was slightly startled as he looked at Jing Qingqi. In the northern border, he had guessed that the other party's identity was not ordinary. Duanmu Qinghui had called him Your Highness. In the southern region, there were only 3 imperial clans. Could it be that Jing Qingqi was a prince of a small country? Young friend, there's no need to be surprised. The predecessor of the Myriad Cultivator Alliance was the state of Jing, the 4th empire of the southern domain. Of course, it couldn't compare to the current 3 emperors. Even when the state of Jing was at its strongest, its territory was still the smallest, and its national strength was also the weakest. Qingqi is a descendant of our great Jing's royal family. Because of an accident, Qing Lao explained with a sigh. In the past half-month, he often saw Qin Hao holding an ancient token in his hand in the bamboo grove. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it. Perhaps the Xianyuan family was putting some pressure on him. However, after a few times, Qin Lao noticed the ancient token. As the last official of the Great Jing, he discovered that the ancient token was an item of the former royal family. Miss Xiao Han's matter has already made you very worried. Old man didn't tell you and made the decision in private to invite Your Highness Qingqi over. I hope it didn't affect you, Qing Lao said with some embarrassment. He had asked the old demon and learned where Qin Hao's ancient token had come from. It turned out that Qin Hao's group had come to the southern region to find Jing Qingqi. If you had told me earlier, this junior wouldn't have had to take so many detours. Qin Hao shook his head with a smile. The heavens were truly toying with him. Big brother Qingqi's family is actually so powerful in the southern region. Xiaogua said enviously. He used to be the son of the leader of Exploding Flame City's #1 mercenary group and was already the moon surrounded by the stars. Although he was later conferred the title of Qingqi by Qin Hao, his background couldn't compare to Jing Qingqi's. Little brother Gua, you must be joking. Jing Qingqi nodded. Xiaogua's performance in the Emperor Martial competition had been outstanding and could not be ignored. Jing Qingqi was no stranger to him. However, when he looked at Qin Hao's group, his gaze was somewhat regretful. Why don't I see Xuehan? Didn't she come with you? There was actually a gap between him and Qin Hao. However, Yi Xuehan, even though the two of them had not met in private, they had already established a deep friendship in the arena. At that time, the two of them would not have held back at the same time. In fact, they both admired each other. Alas, it's difficult to let Brother Han come. Xiaogua sighed. With the signs of the Divine Palace, the mortality rate was as high as 100%. Yi Longyuan had more than a dozen princesses, but he only had one precious son. There was no way he would let Yi Xuehan come. I really want to see him, Jing Qingqi said. What, you're not convinced? Qin Hao smiled. Seeing Yi Xuehan was just a pretense. His real goal was to exchange pointers again. Ha ha ha! Jing Qingqi and Xiaogua both laughed. Cough. A deep cough suddenly broke the joyous atmosphere of the group. Qin Hao looked over. It was Xiangbu. At this moment, everyone from the right faction had an extremely impatient expression. Clearly, the right faction was dissatisfied that they had been ignored. Duanmu Qinghui, if you invited the Zheng clan's descendant to reminisce, why did you bring old man along? Why did you summon so many officials? What is the current situation of the Myriad Cultivator Alliance? Xiangbu coldly glanced at Jing Qingqi. His expression was very cold, and there was even a hint of resistance. The meaning of his words was clearly that he did not have time to accompany them. Elder Qinghui, this general's time is very precious. A right faction general snorted coldly. If there is nothing else, we will return to the city to supervise the battle. Another person said. From beginning to end, the right faction people did not take Zheng Qinqi seriously. Although he was a prince of the previous dynasty, many of the right faction people were old officials of the Zheng clan. Not to mention kneeling, they did not even greet him. They completely regarded Zheng Qinqi, this prince, as a passerby. They knew Duanmu Qinghui's wish. He wanted to help the Zheng clan regain their position. This wish was the opposite of the right faction's ideology. The right faction camp currently controlled almost the entire Myriad Cultivator Alliance. Each of them held important positions and were high above. Xiangbu was even more so. How could he allow the Zheng clan to return and take away his glory, wealth, and power? Now, everything in the Myriad Cultivator Alliance was protected by the right faction. It had nothing to do with the Zheng clan. At least they thought so. Zheng Qingqi's expression was unsightly. It was as if he was an ant in the eyes of the right faction generals. He had to look up to them. Even in the past, he was not as important as Qin Hao in the main hall of the Zheng clan. At the very least, when Qin Hao stepped in, many of the people present respectfully addressed him as Pavilion Master Qin. Their tone was more or less respectful. But what about him? He was a descendant of Emperor Zheng. According to his current status, he was the crown prince. Yes, the Zheng clan had abdicated, but he did not receive the respect he deserved. On the contrary, in front of his former officials, he had to look up to them. One could see how uncomfortable Zheng Qingqi's heart was. Elder Qinghui, brother Qin Hao, I had better leave. Zheng Qingqi was very uncomfortable. He knew that the right faction people did not welcome him. Standing in the hall, he had no right to speak. He was even an eyesore to the right faction. After all, he had no right to participate in the Myriad Cultivator Alliance's political affairs. Even if the Zheng clan's former world was about to be destroyed. Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 1311. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Quan's Sun Generals, are you not familiar with the descendants of Emperor Zheng? Qin Hao looked at the right faction with an oppressive gaze. Even he could sense the contempt and malice in his eyes. He didn't know what had happened to the Zheng family, but as a subject, it was his duty to remember his master's kindness. Could it be that none of the fat generals here had received favors from the Zheng family? Hadn't the Zheng family helped them when they were at their peak? The descendants of their former master were right in front of them, yet they turned a blind eye to them. Had their conscience been eaten by dogs? The oppressive gaze made the right faction feel heavier and more cautious. Although Qin Hao wasn't a member of the Myriad Cultivator Alliance, he wasn't to be underestimated. He had Duan Zhanfei, an imperial envoy, and the support of the entire Night Luo Palace. As long as he raised his arm and shouted, it would not be difficult for him to overthrow Xiangbu. At this critical juncture, the power gathered around Qin Hao had become the main force against the Xianyuan family. Who dared to provoke him? Greetings, young Master Zheng. Greetings, young Master Zheng. I am Xiangbu. Only then did they bow to Zheng Qingqi, but it was just a perfunctory greeting. Xiangbu didn't even stand up from his chair or turn his head. At this moment, Xiaogua couldn't suppress the anger rising in his heart and glared at the right faction. Qing Lao, please speak your mind. Qin Hao stood with his hands behind his back. He was also displeased. As an outsider, Dan Gu couldn't interfere too much with the Myriad Cultivator Alliance's internal affairs. Seeing that Qin Hao had intimidated the right faction, Qing Lao heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he turned to Zheng Qingqi and begged, Your Highness, if I may be so bold, I beg the imperial family to return and take back the throne to save the citizens of Zheng. Thump. Qing Lao knelt again. I beg the imperial family to return and save the citizens of Zheng. Whoosh! The ministers of the left faction knelt and begged one after another. In an instant, the atmosphere in the hall was abnormally silent. Even the falling leaves could be heard. Everyone was stunned, including Jing Qinqi himself. The Zheng clan regaining the throne had always been Duanmu Qinghui's wish and ideal. Normally, he kept his wish buried deep in his heart. Although he did not speak of it to others, he never forgot about it. It was only today, with Qin Hao present, that he dared to say it out loud. He knew very well that it would be difficult for him and the left faction behind him to contend against the powerful right faction. But today was different from the past. Qin Hao led Dan Gu into the Myriad Cultivator Union. With the support of the Emperor and the full support of the Night Net Palace, the general trend was already set. His immense unity far surpassed that of Xiangbu's right faction. If he was willing to support the Jing tribe, Xiangbu would not be able to stop him. As for Qin Hao, he had already formed a friendship with Jing Qinqi in private, and with the existence of his relationship with Qin Lao, he obviously would not refuse. This was a great opportunity for the Zheng clan to return. The right time, the right place, the right people, everything was ready. Duanmu Qinghui, are you serious? Xiangbu suddenly stood up in shock. He was finally willing to leave the comfortable tiger skin chair. He had always known Duanmu Qinghui's intention of supporting the Zheng clan. He also knew that he had not summoned Jing Qinqi today to reminisce about the past. But he had never thought that the other would dare to say it out loud. He should have first tactfully conveyed the message to everyone and then acted according to Xiangbu's expression. At least, that was what Xiangbu thought. It was definitely not Duanmu Qinghui's words that pushed the Zheng clan back onto the throne. Chief Elder Duanmu, this. Jing Qinqi had a difficult expression. He also felt very surprised. Your Highness, the Xianyuan clan has invaded and attempted to swallow up the old lands of our Jing clan. The people are anxious and urgently need someone to calm them down. If the imperial family returns, the people will reignite their fighting spirit and resolve to resist the enemy. They will not be as scattered as they are now, Qin Lao said emotionally. His words were very reasonable. The people of the Zheng clan lived in the southern border and had been protected by the Zheng clan for generations. Even though they had changed the name of the country to the Myriad Cultivator Alliance, the imperial family had long been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It was not something that a mere 100 years could erase. If the Zheng clan returned and regained the throne, they would certainly set off a wave of enthusiasm in the lifeless Myriad Cultivator Alliance. At that time, not only would the people support them, but the old followers of the Zheng clan and some hermit clans would also receive the call and respond enthusiastically. It would play a great role in resolving the current crisis. But how can the present Zheng clan have the ability to lead you? Jing Qinqi felt powerless all over. His family had suffered such a blow and had completely lost the glory of an emperor. Not to mention leading the Myriad Cultivator Alliance, even standing in front of Duanmu Qinghui, a half-step alchemy emperor, he appeared very weak. Haha, First Elder Qinghui, I'm afraid you can't hold back your excitement and are dreaming. The return of the Jing clan is no small matter. Why don't we let young Master Jing go back first and discuss it in private? At this time, a young man with a haughty expression stood out from beside Xiangbu. He stared at Jing Qinqi with a cold smile. His impatient eyes were already issuing an order for him to leave. Who are you? Asked Qin Hao. The young man was stunned. He looked left and right, then pointed at his nose. You're asking me? Yes, it's you, said Xiaogua coldly. Although the other party looked a little older than Qin Hao, everyone here was a man of status. However, the people standing here all had sufficient weight, and it was not the place for a frivolous young man to interrupt. Especially this guy's eyes, which seemed to be chasing Jing Qinqi away. Involuntarily, the young man's face twisted, as if he had lost face. As the grandson of the first elder of the right faction, Who didn't know his name in the myriad cultivator alliance? Could it be that Qin Hao wanted to make him look bad on purpose? Humiliate him? Pavilion Master Qin, this is old man's dog grandson. Xiangbu said and glared at Xiang Mo, speak properly to Pavilion Master Qin. Don't be rude. Divine Sovereign of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 13:12. Translator, Naobo Studio Editor. Naobo Studio. What is an emperor? There was a hint of warning in his words. Xiang Mo naturally understood what he meant. He casually cupped his hands and said, Xiang Mo of the Xiang family, my talent is mediocre. Pavilion Master is wise and powerful. After the Battle of Golden Light City, I became famous. It's normal that Pavilion Master doesn't remember someone like me who has done nothing. Qin Hao glanced at him indifferently. Xiang Mo belittled himself and praised others. He seemed humble, but he was actually unconvinced. In the past, Qin Hao wouldn't have minded teaching him a lesson. However, perhaps because of his age, Qin Hao was no longer a 16 or 17-year-old boy. He didn't care about such trivial matters. Looking at Xiangbu, Qin Hao continued, First Elder Xiangbu, what do you think? This. Xiangbu paused and looked at the people of the right faction behind him. Since the Jing family had returned, they naturally wouldn't hand over their power easily. However, as the former royal family, the Jing family naturally had the right to return. Publicly rejecting them wasn't something the first elder should do. Pavilion Master Qin, why don't you ask the Jing family first? Xiangbu said. Qin Hao nodded. What do you think, Brother Jing? If Jing Qinqi took the initiative to take the throne, Qin Hao would do his best to help. If he himself didn't agree, it would be meaningless to force it. Brother Qin, Pavilion Master Qin, didn't he say that the Jing family doesn't have the ability to continue leading the 10,000 Cultivator Alliance? Why do you have to force him? Xiang Mo interrupted Jing Qinqi with a cold smile. It was as if Qin Hao was forcing him to agree. You have a problem with that? Qin Hao's eyes were sharp. It was rude to interrupt others. As a minister of the previous dynasty, it was even more disrespectful to interrupt the previous master. Facing Qin Hao's sharp gaze, Xiang Mo smiled casually. He stepped forward and asked, Young Master Jing, what is an emperor? An emperor has the world in his heart and acts according to the will of heaven. He has the courage to face danger without fear, the will to shake the world, and the benevolence to sacrifice himself to save others. This is an emperor. Jing Qinqi answered seriously. Even though the Jing family abdicated, their descendants still remembered the philosophy of governing. Tsk. Xiang Mo shook his head. Wrong. Monarchs need to rely on their strength to drive away the weak. They need to seize the fortune of the heavens and earth and trample on the masses. Who wouldn't submit to them? What does it mean to have the world in mind, to act according to the will of the heavens, to have empty heirs, and to be incompetent to abdicate? I'm sorry, but this is the opinion of the Xiang clan. We're not criticizing the old imperial family. Young Master Jing, please don't take it to heart. The left and right factions could not help but whisper to each other. In Jing Qinqi's eyes, the word benevolence came first. As for Xiang Mo, emperors were the strongest. Strength should dominate the masses and be the sole ruler of heaven and earth. Actually, there was nothing wrong with their opinions. If there was a difference, it would be the way the emperors did things. Now that the Jing family had abdicated, Xiang Mo had said in front of Jing Qinqi that only the strong were fit to be the emperor. He was implying that the Jing family was incompetent and that the Xiang family was more suitable to be the emperor. You taught him this? Qin Hao looked at Xiangbu. That's just my grandson's personal opinion. Xiangbu stroked his beard and smiled, tacitly agreeing. In fact, He also felt that the Xiang family was more suitable to inherit the Myriad Cultivator Alliance because they were stronger than the Jing family and had more power to convince the masses. If Pavilion Master Qin has other opinions, why don't you share them with me? Xiang Mo smiled proudly. You want to talk about the Emperor with me? Qin Hao's eyes turned colder. Xiang Mo was stunned. Did he say something wrong? Get out, Qin Hao said. Xiang Mo's face suddenly turned cold. What did he mean by telling him to get out? Could it be that Qin Hao did not understand the Emperor and had poked his sore spot? Xiang Bu's face also turned cold. Xiang Mo was his grandson. Who was he to tell his grandson to get out in front of him? This Dan Gu was becoming more and more lawless. Throw him out. Qin Hao looked at the Imperial trainer. Bang! The messenger casually lifted his robe, and Xiang Mo felt a wave of power rushing towards him. He felt like a falling leaf in the middle of a raging ocean. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell out of the palace. This scene shocked everyone. Xiang Bu did not have time to react. When he did, the many generals behind him were filled with righteous indignation, and powerful primordial qi surged around them. You! Xiang Mo clutched his chest in embarrassment. He gritted his teeth and glared at Qin Hao. He was actually thrown out of the town hall in front of everyone. If word of this spread, he would become a laughingstock. Pavilion Master Qin, aren't you being too arrogant? Xiang Bu said. He knew that the Imperial trainer had shown mercy. Otherwise, Xiang Mo would have died long ago. Even so, his grandson being thrown out of the hall still made him extremely unhappy. Arrogant? What can you do about it? Qin Hao retorted. How dare you? Swoosh, swoosh. Several swords were pulled out from the camp of the right faction. In the next second, without exception, the person who pulled out the swords was blasted out of the hall by a powerful force. There was no need for Qin Hao to give another order. The Imperial trainer knew what to do. In the blink of an eye, a group of generals from the right faction were lying on the ground outside the hall. Usually, they would flaunt their strength, but they did not expect that they could not even withstand a single move from Dan Gu. If their subordinates heard about this, they would lose face. Pavilion Master Qin, what are you trying to do? Suddenly, an angry emperor aura bloomed in the hall. Extremely strong golden flames flickered around Xiang Bu's body. Under the flames, he was indeed very tall, mighty, and intimidating. Seeing this, Qin Lao stood in front of Qin Hao. I advise you to behave, the Imperial trainer warned. Is old man afraid of you? Xiang Bu looked directly at the Imperial trainer. He might be afraid if Duan Zhanfei was here. The half-step Yuan Larch would not put a peak emperor-level Imperial trainer in his eyes. After saying that, he took a few more steps toward Qin Hao. Duanmu Qinghui could not protect this Dan Gu kid. Didn't your grandson call the strong emperor? He should rely on the strong to drive out the weak, trample on the masses, and be the only sovereign. Are you not convinced? Qin Hao stared at Xiang Bu. If you are not convinced, I can replace you. The incompetent should abdicate. Palace Master Yi. Qin Hao shouted. Buzz. Outside the hall, an invisible emperor aura came, penetrating the discussion hall and gathering on Xiang Bu's body. 9-star emperor aura was vast and boundless. Xiang Bu only felt that his shoulders were carrying a huge mountain. Under this great pressure, his shoulder blades were about to shatter. The soles of his feet were slowly sinking into the ground, and his internal organs were about to be squashed. Palace Master Yi, please have mercy. Xiang Bu raised his head. Blood seeped out from under his beard. The suppressive force was increasing, and he could not hold on any longer. However, this force ignored his pleas. Enough, Qin Hao said. Buzz. The invisible force dissipated. Xiang Bu was scared out of his wits. He was sweating profusely as if he had just experienced death. His pale face was filled with fear. At this moment, he finally experienced the terror of a 9-star great emperor. In the past, he thought that stepping into the half-step Yuan the Arch would make everyone respect him. Even the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects that stood at the peak of the southern region could no longer ignore his existence because he was very strong. But just now, he was like an ant. What is an emperor? Qin Hao looked at the frightened Xiangbu at this time. His gaze swept across the faces of everyone in the right faction. Everyone lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at him. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1313. Translator. Naobo Studio Editor. Naobo Studio Ning Wu Upheaval. What was an emperor? At different heights, the scenery would naturally be different. Xiang Mo believed that the strong were emperors, stepping on the masses and suppressing the weak. Obviously, his understanding was the most superficial and still in the growth stage. Xiangbu believed that a half-step Yuan emperor was an emperor, controlling life and death, dominating the myriad cultivator alliance. However, a 9-star emperor's aura descended, making him realize how small and stupid he was. An emperor is unyielding to people and fate, stepping on the earth to support the heavens and overturning the universe. An emperor is someone who overlooks the ages, surpasses the ancients, and leaves a mark in the history. You're talking to me about being an emperor? Qin Hao looked at everyone. Everyone trembled. This tone, that's just my opinion in the past. But now, if I can't split the sun, moon, and stars, break the heavenly Tao, and escape the cycle of reincarnation, what's the difference between an emperor and an ant? Qin Hao's sharp tone was restrained. He raised his head slightly, and his deep eyes seemed to pierce through the roof of the palace, into the 9 heavens, and into a vast and boundless world. Everyone's heart trembled fiercely. Splitting the sun, moon, and stars, breaking the heavenly Tao, and escaping the cycle of reincarnation, that was a god. Qin Hao was just a speck of dust. Being an emperor was just a step in front of him. He wanted to step on the 9 heavens and stand shoulder to shoulder with a god. Was there no reverence in his eyes? The palace fell silent. The aura of a 9-star great emperor had made everyone feel the terror on a deeper level. But Qin Hao's tone was even more terrifying than a 9-star great emperor's aura. Qin Hao looked at Jing Qinqi and said, "Running away is never the best way to solve a problem. Maybe you'll see a unique scenery when you face it. Go back and discuss with your elders. If you need anything, come to me." After saying that, Qin Hao turned and walked out of the palace, ignoring Xiang Mo, who was staring at him like he had seen a ghost, and leisurely returned to the bamboo grove. At this moment, Xiao Han's smile appeared in his mind. Qin Hao paused and shook his head. "What's so good about becoming a god? It's better to look at you." Figures walked past Xiang Mo one after another. "You don't deserve to talk about emperors in front of him." The imperial censor coldly glanced at Xiang Mo. "What do you know about being an emperor?" Xiaogua glared at Xiang Mo. With a flip of his hand, a stick of sugar-coated haws appeared in his palm. He bit down hard on one, raised his head, and strode off. "Go back and ask your grandpa again what an emperor is," the old demon said. He disappeared from Xiang Mo's sight with Dan Gu and the others. Puff! Xiang Mo's chest tightened as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking at Qin Hao's back that was about to disappear, he suddenly felt that his back was so tall that it was difficult for him to even look up. Bastard! Despicable bastard! After returning to the bamboo grove, as usual, Qin Hao boiled medicine, concocted pills, and took care of Xiao Han. He paid no attention to the disturbances in the outside world. Qin Hao gave Jing Qinqi some time to think about it. The Zheng clan had undergone a drastic change. Perhaps they were unwilling to ascend to the throne again. Qin Hao did not force them. In order to wear the crown, one must first bear the weight. Qin Hao understood this. Especially at this critical juncture, when Xianyuan attacked, the pressure was even greater. If the Zheng clan did not enter the secular world, they could avoid war and let their people continue. Once they raised the emperor's flag, the clan would be in danger of being exterminated. It was up to the Zheng clan to make the final decision. Xiao Han needed a long time to recover. With the protection of Crimson and a mysterious holy qi, her spiritual sense was able to struggle tenaciously under Xianyuan Wuying's rule of Emperor's will. At present, Xianyuan Wuying's rule of Emperor's will had been broken, and the soul-sealing and soul-extinguishing net had been removed. However, Xiao Han's spiritual sense was severely injured and too weak. Even if there was a way to take out Crimson, Qin Hao did not dare to try. He did not know if it would affect Xiao Han. He could only try to communicate with Crimson when her spiritual sense was stronger. The hidden injuries in Duan Zhanfei's body had been completely purified by the tranquil water. In addition, the water elemental power had slightly strengthened Uncle Duan's body. He was slightly stronger than before. As for the unpleasant incident with the Xiang clan in the town hall that day, Qin Hao did not take it to heart. He was not worried at all. Old man Xiang Bu might have the idea of becoming emperor. In the matter of dealing with Xuanyuan's attack, he was in line with Qin Hao and Duanmu Qinhui. After all, he had advocated war before and was on the Xianyuan clan's kill list in the morning. If Feng City fell, Xiang Bu might not die behind Qin Hao. In short, everything passed in an orderly manner. Even though the days were tense and stressful, no one would give up, nor would they sit and wait for death. All of them cultivated with all their might, and it could be said that they found joy in the midst of hardship and lived to the fullest. What puzzled Qin Hao was that it had been nearly a month since the Battle of Golden Light City. During this period, Xianyuan had sent out a huge army and launched a huge net in all directions. However, they only surrounded the front line of Feng City and did not attack. They did not even try to harass it. It was very strange. At first, Qin Hao, Duan Zhanfei, and Duanmu Qinhui all thought that Xianyuan Wuba was planning some tricks. But today, an upheaval that shook the southern territory broke everyone's conjecture. Something big has happened. In the bamboo grove, Duanmu Qinhui, Gu Huangshou, Xiang Bu, and the higher-ups of the Wan Cultivator Union had all arrived. Behind them were the left and right factions. However, many generals and civil officials stood very carefully outside the fence. Even Xiang Mo did not dare to step in. They knew that the bamboo grove was the place where Princess Daliao rested. Not to mention the terrible Qin Hao and Duan Zhanfei inside, even Palace Master Yi had appeared frequently in recent days. No one dared to provoke the first empress of the southern territory. "Why is Qing Lao so flustered?" Qin Hao stood up and asked. Beside him, Yi Ninghong, Duan Zhanfei, the imperial censor, and Xiaogua all stood at the same time. Only Xiao Han was completely unaffected by the outside world. She calmly looked forward, allowing the wind to blow her hair. "Xiang Bu, why did you run over so impatiently? Do you want to experience what it means to be an emperor again?" Yi Ninghong said unhappily. She had appeared frequently recently because she had been listening to Qin Hao's lecture about the Tao. She had been greatly inspired by a 9-star great emperor breaking through to the second realm. "It's a misunderstanding. How would I dare?" Xiang Bu stumbled in fright. In front of the first empress, he had no temper at all. Qin Hao stepped forward and asked, "Qing Lao, what happened? Could it be that Jing Qinqi had thought things through and brought his clansmen into the city? Then Qing Lao should be happy, not flustered. Ning Lingjue was defeated and abdicated. The martial Ning Empire has changed hands." Qing Lao replied in horror. "What did you say?" Duan Zhanfei was extremely shocked. "Ning Lingjue was defeated by someone," Xiang Bu repeated, his voice trembling. Great Emperor Ningwu was a 9-star great emperor, one of the 3 sovereigns. He was a true expert of the southern region. However, from today onwards, he would become history. Do you know who did it? Yininghong asked in a loud voice. She couldn't help feeling nervous. She had personally experienced Ning Lingjue's ability. She knew that even if she teamed up with Emoing, they might not be able to defeat him. Had another world-shocking great emperor appeared in the southern region? At this moment, even she, the palace master of the Nightnet Palace, felt a great pressure. Tell me the details. Qin Hao was also cautious. A 9-star great emperor's defeat would cause a huge commotion in the eastern region. At the very least, the empire would change hands, and at the very worst, the clan would be exterminated. He hadn't even overthrown the Xianyuan family yet, but the southern region's situation had already been broken by someone else. Who was that person? Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 13-14. Seeking Warren. Invisible pressure spread in the air. After the Battle of Golden Light City, Qin Hao led the heavily injured Duan Zhanfei and Dan Ge to avoid the Wanxiu alliance. They were unable to take the initiative to attack or ask for help. It was as if they were isolated from the outside world. However, 3 days ago, the once arrogant Ning Wu Emperor was defeated and abdicated. One of the 3 emperors of the southern region had been killed. I don't know the exact reason. According to the report, Ning Lingjue went to the Graveness Mountain and fought with a great emperor to decide who Ning Wu belonged to. In the end, he was defeated and abdicated. In one night, all the members of the royal family disappeared. No one knows where they are now. Qing Lao said. The Wanxiu alliance was trapped. The spies were placed in the outside world by him. Their cultivation was very low, and their status was even lower. They didn't have the qualifications to infiltrate the higher-ups and obtain detailed information. However, one thing was certain. This was a civil war in the Ning clan. Although Ning Lingjue's branch had fallen, Ning Wu's title was still the same. It was controlled by a group of new faces from the Ning family. We don't know who the expert who defeated Ning Lingjue is. The current Ning Wu is under the control of a prince called Ning Tianxing. Those who follow him will remain in their positions. Those who resist will be killed mercilessly. Xiangbu rubbed his temples. He felt a headache coming on. The war in the Wanxiu alliance had already changed the situation in the southern region. No one had expected that the upheaval of the Ningwu Empire would come so quickly. On the surface, Ningwu had nothing to do with the Wanxiu alliance. However, how could the turmoil in any of the top forces of the southern region not affect others? After all, no one knew what this newly appointed prince Ning Tianxing would do next, and which sect he would attack. If he suddenly attacked from the source of the southern river, and led his troops east to attack the Wanxiu alliance, it would be a disaster for everyone. And from the perspective of the Wanxiu alliance, it was very possible. Outside the walls of the courtyard, the officials of the 2 factions had worried looks on their faces. Each of them had a sullen face. They knew that any new ruler who ascended to the throne urgently needed scholarly achievements to prove himself. The Wanxiu alliance was on the verge of collapse. It was Ning Tianxing's next target. Ning Tianxing. Qin Hao pondered. As far as he could remember, there was no such person among the top geniuses of the southern domain. There wasn't even a first-rate genius. In fact, when Ning Chaofan followed Qin Hao, he had bragged about many capable people in his family. However, Ning Tianxing had never been mentioned. Who was this person's son? Xianyuan Wuba besieged Feng City, but didn't attack. He had been besieging it for a month. Now that he thought about it, the other party wasn't plotting anything. The military power of the Xianyuan clan had an overwhelming advantage. He didn't need to plan anything. He was just waiting. He was waiting for the battle at Songwen Mountain. He was waiting for Ning Wu's final hero to arrive. After all, if the martial Ning Empire was unstable, Once the Xianyuan family and the Myriad Cultivator Union had a decisive battle, the new ruler of the martial Ning Empire might bite Nan Ao. Now that Ning Wu had settled down, Xianyuan Wuba would naturally take care of his relationship with Ning Wu in advance and resolve his worries. Then, his next move would be full-scale siege. Full-scale siege. Duan Zhanfei and the Imperial Censor's expressions suddenly changed. They looked at each other. Their words were like heavy hammers that fell on Qing Lao and Xiangbu's hearts. The Grand Elders of the left and right sects of the Myriad Cultivator Union turned completely pale. "Did you get in touch with the people we sent to the Sword Sect and the Arhat Palace to ask for help?" Qin Hao asked Duanmu Qinghui. "No." Qing Lao shook his head helplessly. At this moment, he didn't have any hope. He and Qin Hao might not be able to persuade the two great sects to come in person. None of the people they sent had any weight. Perhaps the Sword Sect and the Arhat Palace would think that they were looking down on them. "What about Jing Qinqi?" Qin Hao asked again. The Myriad Cultivator Union situation was even more dangerous. Not only did they have to face the full-scale attack of the Xianyuan clan, but Ning Tianxing's next move was very likely to lead an army to attack and divide the territory with the Xianyuan clan. If Qin Hao were the martial emperor of Ning Tianxing, he would do the same. The Zheng clan might have weakened, but the remaining power of the imperial family was still there. They were more or less a force. The Myriad Cultivator Union urgently needed any force to join. Also no. Qing Lao smiled bitterly. There was no response. The people they sent to contact found that the Zheng clan's secluded place was completely empty. Presumably, the Zheng clan didn't want to get involved in the war anymore and didn't want to be disturbed. "Look at what you've done." The imperial messenger glared at Xiangbu. If Feng City fell, it would be the Myriad Cultivator Union's own fault. "I'll go back to set up the defense. Qinghui, I'll leave it to you. In the past, I've done many things wrong to you." At this time, Xiangbu looked at Duanmu Qinghui with guilt and self-blame in his eyes. His tall and majestic figure in the past was filled with endless powerlessness when he turned around. It was as if he wasn't the majestic chief elder of the right faction, but an old man who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. In the beginning, he was wholeheartedly for the good of the Myriad Cultivator Union. If the Wanqiu alliance had a little bit of resistance, Yininghong wouldn't be unable to drink the tea. Fortunately, Xianyuan Gaoyan had an agreement with her. No matter what the result of the battle was, the two of them wouldn't interfere. Clearly, the Xianyuan family still had some thoughts about the first empress of the southern region. Xianyuan Gaoyan shook his head and smiled bitterly. He would invite anyone to drink tea, but he wouldn't invite lunatic Luo. He said, "If the Wanqiu alliance loses this battle, Palace Master Yi, will you join my southern proud great emperor?" "They haven't lost yet," Yininghong reprimanded. "Screech!" the demonic Oriole cried. The endless darkness approached the golden light. "You're really stubborn." However, this stubbornness can't save the lives of the Nightnet Palace disciples. Xianyuan Gaoyan put down the teacup. He knew that he couldn't persuade Yininghong with a few words. Only when the Xianyuan family's army slaughtered the Nightnet Palace disciples would the first empress of the southern region put down her pride and know what it meant to submit. "The Nightnet Palace disciples aren't as weak as you think." Yininghong gritted her teeth. Perhaps the disciples of the sect were a little weak. However, the current leader of the Nightnet Palace was the strongest person from 600 years ago. Even Xianyuan Gaoyan wasn't qualified to sit across from him. When he first entered the southern region, he claimed to be the conqueror of a generation. In Golden Light City, he swept through the geniuses of various sections. Even when facing three Essence Soul Realm cultivators of the same generation, he only needed to step on the grandson of the southern proud great emperor. Could the current him create another miracle? "Looks like you have something to rely on." Let's wait and see. Xianyuan Gaoyan smiled. His face was filled with confidence. At this moment, the two emperors of the southern region looked down at the sky. The millions of people who were about to fight on the battlefield were just insects to the emperors. They were the spectators of the 9 heavens. Roar, roar, roar. A huge sound wave erupted like a tsunami, engulfing Feng City. The city walls trembled under the roar. Just yesterday, the people believed that they were safe and that the Xianyuan family's army couldn't break through the thick wall. However, at this moment, the terrifying sound pierced through the air. In the hearts of the people, there was only endless fear. On the city tower, Xiangbu raised his sword with one hand and shouted, "Air Cavalry Legion!" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless Pegasi demonic beasts soared into the sky. On the back of each Pegasus sat a powerful white-armored dragon spear knight. There were close to 50,000 of them. It was a spectacular sight. Moreover, the aura of each knight was at least of the advanced heavenly saint realm.